Welcome back, everybody. Tonight is, what's tonight? Today is Tuesday, September 6th. It's about 7:30. Tonight is the Planning Zoning General Meeting and Public Hearing. We are in room 206. Welcome back, everybody. We had basically the month of August off, except I know Jeremy and Fred and staff, including Dave Keating, his former staff, worked a lot, but all the rest of us had a little vacation. We're going to get right into it right now. We have two items. We have a general meeting, then a public hearing, then we're going to go back to a general meeting again. As you guys remember, last time we announced that Jim Rand was retiring from the Planning Zoning Commission. So the first item on our agenda tonight is to interview and possibly appoint a new member to replace Jim Rand. The gentleman we have tonight with us is Mike Netter. He was recommended by the Republican Town Committee to take this seat for Mr. Rand. Mr. Netter was also nominated or recommended by the Republican Town Committee about a year ago. At one point in time, he interviewed for a position when there was not one available. So what we're going to, Mr. Netter, you can speak for himself when he gets up here, is he was the former chairman of the Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. I think he rotated a couple of different times. He resigned from the Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. So tonight we're going to ask him to speak, give him a couple of interviews and questions, and see where we go from there. Mr. Gleason, would you like? Oh, actually, you can stay right there.
I'll just.
I think that microphone should be on. Is that Mike? Does that work? It does not work.
I'm the tall one.
Okay. Mike Netter, welcome, sir. Tell us about yourself.
I'm a lifelong Darien resident. Married my high school sweetheart, and been doing some zoning work on the Zoning Board of Appeals. We've had a good run there. We've been able to sort of shrink the volume there, which has been a good thing. Variances are supposed to be sort of few and far between, and this town was, when I started, granting about 100 a year, or at least looking at 100 applications a year. And as I'm retiring, we're at about 20. So we've done a pretty good job of streamlining that process. That's not thanks just to me. We got a great board. Woody, our staff member, did a really great job, and looking forward to, if you guys think I'm the right fit, helping out with this commission.
Fantastic. I was actually started on I was also on the Zoning Board of Appeals for a while, and based on what the Zoning Board of Appeals did over the years, is they submitted requested changes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And a lot of those changes came from those guys, and we ended up adopting them because there were things like Cupola Heights and whatnot, and things changed. We also changed sign regulation, I think, under his watch, which is part of it, and we redid a lot of the other things. So what I would like to do is, I know Mike pretty well, I've seen his work over the years, but I would like anyone to ask any questions if they would like to.
None from me.
I know of Michael by reputation, and all well.
As do I.
Fantastic. Wow, that was a tough interview. Okay, with that said, I would like to entertain a motion to appoint Mike Netter as a new commissioner to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I'll make that motion.
Make that motion, okay.
Yep.
Looking for a second. Adam makes a second. All those in favor? Looks like it's 5-0. 4-0. Jeff Ball is not here tonight, so he's going to appear. So, Mr. Netter, welcome, sir.
Welcome.
Welcome indeed.
You are going to be able to sit at the podium tonight and review everything with us. And I think you can get sworn in by the town clerk in the next day or so.
That's fine.
Fantastic. All right.
Still your extra space up here.
That's all right.
Okay, that is going to be the suspension, I think is the proper word, of the general meeting at this point in time. Now we're going to go into the public hearing. Getting right to the agenda, the first item on the agenda is a continuation of public hearing regarding coastal site plan review number 27, F as in Frank, flood damage prevention application number 20, F as in Frank, land filling and regrading application number 325A, amendment to the special permit application number 22Q, to the site plan, the Tokeneke Club, Inc. at 4 Tokeneke Beach Road. The proposal is to replace the existing swimming pool and its equipment, reduce the size and renovate the bathhouse, relocate the snack bar from the ground level of the clubhouse to an outdoor area nearer the pool, renovate the existing snack bar area, make improvements to terracing, walkways, landscaping, and perform related site development activities within regulated areas. No intensification of use is proposed. The 5.17 plus or minus acres subject property is located at the southern terminus of Tokeneke Beach Drive at the intersection with Butler's Island Drive, and is shown as on Assessor's Map number 67 is Lot 83 in the R1 zone. The public hearing was opened on July 12th, 2022. We did not close the public hearing because of a few outstanding items. I don't know what those are. I know Mr. Gleason will tell us, but Jeremy, can you give us a quick update?
Sure, you may recall it at the public hearing in July, a number of questions came up regarding comments from Rick Telemelli, department staff, that Wilder was working on with his team to respond to. A lot of them related to flood issues, what to do during a flood, how to minimize flood damage. In the interim month, Wilder and his team have modified the plans a little bit, turning the pool and clarifying another number of issues. You may recall at the last hearing, a few neighbors came out to talk about landscaping and fencing. Wilder and his team have worked closely with them on buttoning that up and buttoning up a number of certifications, final other things. So Wilder's going to walk us through all those changes since the last meeting.
Okay, fantastic. Mr. Gleason, welcome, sir.
Thank you. So I submitted a brief, there's 10 copies. I don't know if you have them, if you distributed them, but my presentation you should have in front of you that will allow you to sort of follow along. If you can't see the screen, at least if you'd see it in front of you. So we're here tonight, and I'm going to start with sort of an overview of what changes since we met. And we start with the basic layout. This is a sketch, and it's going to show some of the things that we changed. And one of the things is we had a zero entry, and it was on the south side of the pool, not the north side. And the zero entry proved, after looking at things, we decided to flip the pool. So instead of having the diving board on the north side as previously, it's now on the south side. The lanes are on the east side, and instead of a zero entry, which has to be longer, we now have a sun shelf that is basically a foot deep, and then there's a series of steps that lead into the lanes. And by doing this, frankly, there's some value engineering. And it also reduced, it resulted in a different layout, because now instead of just sheet pile with a cofferdam, we're going to have a bunch of wooden piles along with some sheet pile on a temporary basis. And I'll get into that later. But that's the major change. There are some other changes that aren't reflected on this plan. The terrace has been extended down here on the southeast corner, and there's a crabapple tree that exists now. And in our negotiations or discussions with the Monteros, they wanted that preserved. So we have taken away, we've increased the green on the northeast corner and decreased it on the southeast corner, and we're probably going to be able to preserve that crabapple tree. And the plans that we submitted with landscaping show all the changes that we're doing to meet the Monteros' desires. Okay, and they've signed off on that, and there's an email that I submitted that shows that, and I can go through that later. But that's the Montero side. This sketch is not accurate because it still showed the HVAC, the heaters on top of a platform, and we had proposed at the last hearing to drop it down. So this is somewhat inaccurate in that respect as well. It also, we show umbrellas over here on what will be the expanded bistro dining to the east of the clubhouse. We're going to have sunshades there, and we have a sketch that shows that. But otherwise, the other thing we did is we moved the pergola has come a little closer to Long Island Sound, and we have a little bit of a terrace here. There was a walkway connecting. We've eliminated that, so that the jetty walkway will terminate here instead of connecting to the steps that lead up to the pergola terrace. Let's see, we've relocated, so we've talked about the diving well, the pool patio, landscaping. Stormwater facilities have been modified. Tom Nelson's plans have been submitted. They show the changes, which reflect these changes, so that you've got that. And that's basic, those are the major changes that we have. So I'm going to go to the next sketch. Let me go down.
V3 is the sunshades you're talking about?
Well, V2 is the boardwalk. This is
V3 is
looking
the
from the up at the snack bar here, the relocated snack bar. Again, we'll have sunshades over here, but it just gives you an idea of what's happening with the boardwalk, the snack bar, and the revised pool house, which is getting shrunk, as you may recall. We're reducing it by over 1,000 square feet. Then here is the revised snack bar. We're going to extend the bar across the water side of it. And this is the sketch so sunshades instead of the umbrellas. They're really cool and fun, and it's kind of, it'll dress up the whole area for the outdoor dining that's going to extend over here. So those are the main changes in what we're doing. This is still under design, and that design will be reflected in the construction drawings, just as the details about the construction will be, we've revised that, but that'll be reflected in the CDs when we go through. You had asked a bunch of questions in item 4 on my submission of August 23rd. We had, item 4 was a memo from A.V. Tucci, our construction manager, who was responding to a series of questions. The first was, how much sheet pile are we going to have, and how many pilings? We've gone from sheet pile exclusively to a series of wooden pressure-treated piles. And the initial
That's a major
design,
change. We talked about that a lot last meeting.
I know, but this is a change, and it was part of the switching from the design of the pool. We're going to wooden piles, which have the same life as sheet pile, but frankly, they're less expensive. And we're doing 235 piles was the initial estimate. Azure D had just told me today, this afternoon, or just moments ago actually, that we're down to 175 on a revised design. So that's going to go down to about 175. We're still doing a sheet pile coffer dam around the outside. A coffer dam is, the sheet pile is going to be above the ground, about 6 feet. It'll be a 20-foot sheet pile that's driven 14 feet down into the ground. And what that does is go around 3 sides, the east side, the water side, and the west side, and it provides protection to the construction site. It defines it, it protects it, it keeps stuff from the construction site from getting into Long Island Sound. And when we're done, or as we're finishing up, that will all come out.
Okay.
So there's 300 linear feet of that, and that will take, they estimated 8 weeks to install. I just talked to Azure D, and she said typically you will vibrate the piles in the sand as deep as possible. Do that all the way around, and then come back and hammer them in so you get the 6-foot reveal around the perimeter. And there's an 8-week estimate. I think that's probably generous, given the changes in the design and the fact that we've got 235 piles estimated there, and we're down to 175 approximately for the wood piles. We are going to do a pre-construction survey to make sure that neighboring houses are in good shape, and we recognize any defects or whatever they have. We're going to have seismic monitors on the edge of our property near the Monteros, so that if there's a problem, we can we know what existed before, and if we're responsible for it, we will take care of it. But that's you normally don't do that when you're just hole ramming or driving, but we're going to do that as an extra measure. And we're not going to be driving from 7:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, for 8 weeks. There's breaks in this. It's not happening on weekends. It's we don't think this is going to be as big a deal as it might appear. Then our working hours are
We
from
just want,
Monday through Friday.
just for the, we want the engineer to say that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let the engineer.
Yeah, I mean,
This
you're
is
making
from
these
the
assumptions on what you're talking about.
All
I'm
right.
staying at her. She
I'm
knows a
repeating
lot
what
more
she
about
said.
this stuff than
I'm
you do, no
repeating what she
offense.
just told me, and I'm happy to have her come in and verify it
Yeah,
for you.
that'd be
Okay?
great.
Our working hours are Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Minimal Saturday work performed and nothing on Sunday. We're going to comply with the Darien noise ordinance. You wanted a list of heavy equipment that will be on site. It's there in item 5. And when the pool shell is complete, all that disappears. So that addresses the questions that you guys had raised. And then the next one was, we had 2 flood preparedness plans. I submitted 2. One is a construction phase flood preparedness plan. That should be in your materials. That is a preliminary one. Once we get our subcontractors on board, they may tweak this a little bit, given their particular trades and so on. But this is designed to address the upfront, how we're going to handle a significant storm event during construction.
I'm gonna go back 1 second. With regard to the pergola getting moved closer to the line sound,
Yeah?
are we having any effect on the flooding, the flood issues and the?
I'll let Azure deal with that, but I think
Okay,
the answer
just
is it
keep that
doesn't
on your
affect
list.
it.
Thank
You want to come up and address that now?
That's fine, when she
Okay.
speaks, but I just want to make sure we don't forget, because you moved it, what, 5 feet closer?
We
to-
moved it, I think, Mel, up what, 10 feet? How much, we moved the pergola forward a bit, right?
Yeah, it's only about 10 feet.
It's about 10
Yeah,
feet.
just to
Okay.
sort of have a
That's fine,
relationship with the diving
but you
board.
can't speak unless
Yeah.
you're.
Right, so what that is, it puts it so it's near the diving board, and aesthetically, it's just far better to
I
have
got
it
it.
located.
But you're getting it into a flood zone.
Yeah,
that's all.
it's, okay. Thank you, so that's,
The 2 construction phases, one is the
one
construction.
is the construction phase, it's a 2-page thing, and it does say it will be revised once we get the subs on board. And then we have the club's flood emergency preparedness plan. We identify who the emergency contacts are, what we're supposed to do, what's the action items that we're supposed to have, and who's responsible for it, and what has to happen. So that reflects, and it also reflects the fact that we have 3 residential heaters for the pool, and those will be on sort of a quick disconnect so they can be put on a dolly and thrown into take an elevator trip up to the attic of the clubhouse.
And this one plan was one that Rich Tamanelli wanted, right?
You want both?
You want to go?
You wanted both, we gave you both. We think these are good, we've thought through it, we've
Oh, great.
had several meetings about them, and they've gone through 3 or 4 different drafts. And we're comfortable with that they accurately do what we're supposed to do and that they address the concerns. And we actually appreciate that, because I think it's a good thing for us to have.
Is Rich gonna sign off on these? He's the one that wants them.
Rick did take a look at both of these plans, and I don't believe he had any comments on them. But he has had the opportunity to review them, and he was okay with.
Yeah.
with what
I was just getting an email for the
presented.
file.
Okay.
One quick question while we're on that slide. I noticed after project completion, you changed to the sunshades. Do they stay during?
Oh, no, those are removable.
Okay, that's not on the list. of
Okay, that's- yeah,
Preparedness, so I
that-
just was curious, is that by default mean they stay in place?
So
Which I thought.
we can amend that to address the sunshades. They are
Yeah.
supposed to be
Got
removable.
it, got it.
Okay.
A lot of places have those now, I think.
I mean, I don't know what's involved to take them down quickly.
Yeah.
They're under tension, but they can come down.
Yeah, okay.
And as the shades that we have in the front entryway from the parking lot on the tennis side, those can come down. They don't stay up all winter. We bring those down.
This one, I
So-
think by Santa too. It's the same type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, you're doing
So-
great, Tal.
All right, so in terms of the original pool design drawings that we submitted have not been revised to reflect the changes we've made. Those will happen in the construction drawings. And I think that in terms of the resolution, you should reflect that if there's a resolution of approval, that should be reflected. Don't tie us into the originally submitted plans for the design of the pool. They've been tweaked in terms of the
wanna do about
engineering
that?
on that.
Because usually you
As well-
reference the plan.
As Wilder said, it would be a condition of approval to match the drawing in, that you showed us earlier.
Right, but also, we submitted architectural plans. And so there's a detailed set of architectural plans that show this, and there's the race letter, but these are the architectural plans that are part of the record. They were submitted in August. So these, they show the revised pool,
That's the existing.
right? Do you want to address this, Mel?
Yeah.
This set of plans has got the sun shelf.
Yes, it
revised
does,
pool.
it does indicate there's,
Not that
there's
one.
sunshades.
That's the existing.
This one does.
Sorry,
Go back.
this is the proposed. Okay, and that shows it. And Tom Nelson's engineering drawings also have been revised to reflect these changes. So you've got good plans for architectural and for the engineering drawings in terms of any resolution.
Yeah, I mean, these are stamps.
And their stamp and all that.
Can you clarify where the discrepancy is in the plans then?
I think this plan, well, here is the fact that we are doing 235 wooden piles. That's not reflected. There's some race plans, engineering plans from race that were originally submitted that we haven't had a chance to update those and get those submitted. So the coastal engineer and the pool engineered from flood damage those plans are not applicable.
Let's
but
have,
they will be
let's
revised.
have her go over it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't think that should be a big concern, because that just follows through, it has to meet code.
Yeah, but that's what you always say.
Yeah,
I don't think what you think about a concern, I care what they think about a concern.
okay, anyway, hopefully. All right, so I'm done with my bit. I think we've addressed the last thing is the Montero agreement, and we have an email that I submitted. It's an exchange of emails. And this is, I think, the last thing in your set of the drawings. It's an email from Ed Montero to me dated August 23rd, saying, "Wilder, many thanks for sending this email in the absence of James Racing, our club manager, who's away. The email confirms to our understanding we are comfortable with the proposed landscaping plan." And I outlined what we're doing with them. It's part of the record. I don't think it's your job to enforce it, but we have an understanding with them. And I also included the landscape plan, which reflected the changes we were making for the Monteros. And that's part of the record.
And the landscaping plan from August 8th, we have that.
Yeah, you have the land, and I think the landscaping plans that were submitted as part of the architectural plans reflect this change. So the Montero improvements are part of the architectural plans, which include the landscape plan. Okay? Good. Heather D., do you want to come on up and address any questions?
Azure D. Slicher, PE, Grace Coastal Engineering.
Could you spell your name for me, please?
A-Z-U-R-E, space, capital D-E-E. Last name is Slicher, S as in Sam, L-E-I-C-H-E-R.
Thank you very much.
So I'll just kind of start a little bit from the beginning as far as the pool orientation flip.
Great.
And so the original design had the shallow end on the seaside of Long Island Sound, which posed some concerns for undermining and scour. As the shallow end did not have to go too deep into the ground, and thus we had the permanent cofferdam originally proposed. The deep end adjacent to the existing bathhouse also posed a challenge for a deep excavation adjacent to an existing building, and concerns over being able to shore up that excavation area without causing any damage to the adjacent buildings and so forth. So upon further value engineering, we determined that flipping the pool, putting the deep end on the Long Island Sound side where we have a deep foundation could eliminate the need for the long-term, permanent sheet pile cofferdam to be left in place, and minimized, a lot of the construction concerns, and also, helped out on the cost end. So with that change in design, we were able to look at doing a pile support. Again, we're still on a beach. We're in an area that is, subject to erosion, so we do need a solid foundation, underneath this pool, and per FEMA, it should be on piles. And so it will be, the structural shell of the pool will be supported on timber piles, on approximately 8x8 grid, and there will be a perimeter wall, basically that follows the outside edge of the patio, which will serve as the outside edge of the patio, and then also help with, reduce potential scour as well. And so between that perimeter wall and the pile supported structural shell, we're down to, originally the estimate was 235, we're down to about 175 or so, maybe even a little bit less than that at the end of the day, in permanent timber pile supports. And these are just driven to refusal. They don't need to be, we do have high ledge rock, so they're gonna be somewhere between 20 and 30 feet long, actually less than that because of the depth of the pool itself. So somewhere in the range of maybe 15 to 20 feet, just driven to refusal onto the ledge.
Is it deep ends, what, 12 feet deep?
11, 6,
Okay.
11, 6.
So it's 13, it's 14 or 12 plus
For construction.
13.
Yeah, and our ledge
25.
varies somewhere between 20 to 30 feet below. So, yeah, so
Okay.
it'll be 15 to 20 foot piles. And so there will be that temporary cofferdam for construction again to minimize any flood damage during construction on the site, as well as providing sedimentation erosion control off the site, and really just storm protection for the workers and the equipment and materials during construction. And that's again approximately 300 feet around 3 sides, which will be removed after construction of the structural components. So we do estimate an 8-week duration for the installation of both that temporary cofferdam and the permanent timber pile. So that's inclusive of both. And again, it's not it's not 8 weeks of pile driving continuously, but it is an 8-week duration, which includes setting up, getting the cofferdam in, doing the excavation. There is a layer of organic material that will be mucked out and replaced, and so all of that initial activity is within that 8-week duration.
And what months of the year are we talking about?
This will be the first thing to go. I think we're starting in a day after Labor Day next year, so it'll be in
It's a
the
year
fall.
from today, okay.
Maybe a little earlier. Wilder had mentioned to us, depending on the weather and what's going on, they might try to shorten the season next year, because the goal is to run the club as normal next year, but maybe shorten the season, which would allow them to get good weather starting in either late August, early September, to get a lot of that legwork done before winter sets in.
So this might happen September, October next year?
No, August, September.
August, September, okay.
But I believe the goal of the construction manager is to have the concrete shell of the pool done by like November of next year, so that we don't have to worry about cold weather concrete and things of that nature, and then all the finished work be through the winter.
I have 2 questions. There's reference made to pre-construction survey of the neighbors. What do you entail? What does that entail?
I'm not sure that came from the construction manager, but typically that would be just looking at elevations of critical features, things that might, if subject to vibration, might move. So elevations of patios, first floor elevations, things of that nature on the adjacent property, as well as again
You're not going inside and
Oh,
doing
it
site
does.
inspections
It
of
will involve-
foundations?
I'm sorry, the pre-construction survey, I did this with the blasting application.
I was gonna say, it's usually
You
just with them
typically
like
go
last-
into the house, photograph everything,
Yeah.
and document what's going on. Now, you have to do it with the neighbor's consent.
Of course.
And, but we have a good relationship with the immediate
Yeah,
neighbors,
yeah.
and we want to do the right thing by them, so we anticipate no issue with that.
Okay.
So you're looking for a cracked foundation?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just- You don't want to see
So it's-
cracks. If
yeah.
there's a crack, it's already
Document it
there,
for ahead of time.
and
Yep.
that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And second question, I noticed that the design of the pergola is immediately in back of the diving well. What is envisioned to be under that pergola? I'm thinking of the safety of the divers with distractions, because it's incredibly distracting in competition or whatever, when you're about to prepare to do dives, there's a bunch of kids in your view right there.
I guess that'd be a question for the club as far as end use. You're
Okay.
talking about chairs,
Yeah.
tables, things like that, which I
think
believe
it's a
would be
safety
the.
concern depending on what you have, or just restrict use while there's competitions happening in that area.
While they're looking at the answer to that, I did want to address the other question about the pergola coming closer to the water. Essentially, the entire site's in the same flood zone, and the elevations are consistent across the property. So there's no measurable increase in wave activity that would impact the pergola at this location versus 10 feet back. It's all the same, but because it's essentially supported on narrow columns, and all of the slats and across the top, and any shade is above the base flood elevation. The only thing that sees any wave action are those columns, and they're slender compared to the incoming wave, and so they essentially it just goes right past them. And again, there's no significant difference between locations because it's the same elevation and therefore the same wave height hitting it, whether it's in its current location or 10 feet back.
So those columns, each one's in a spread footing?
And each one will be independently founded with a deep concrete
Okay.
footing or a pile, probably a pile support with a small footing for each
Okay.
individual one.
Because that's all building department stuff, we didn't really get into that. It has to get bolted, those things have to get bolted to the foundation.
Specific details.
Yes, and Race will develop those specific details.
So you're the structural engineer on that stuff too?
On those components, yes.
Okay,
Well, not me personally, but my firm, yes.
understood, that's fine, okay.
For the programming?
Next?
On the pergola?
On the pergola programming?
Yeah.
Oh, this is New York, yeah.
Mala Kernan, Rogers McCack, MELLA, KERNAN.
Thank you.
So on the question about the diving board, there are code requirements about clearances around the
Yep,
diving board,
yep.
so there's no way that the pergola could be,
Yep,
overhanging it at
yep.
all. And then on the questions that Azure was asking, to prevent the frame from racking, there will have to be moment connections in there so that it basically stays vertical, and then the anchoring down into the ground will be the pile constructions. So there will be some steel within the framework of the pergola, which will have a moment. We've done it with a grade beam, where we basically do the moment connection at the bottom. We've also done it where the moment connections at the top.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's like hurricane proof.
Yeah, they're pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, the one that they did over at 1020 is pretty, I think it's pretty strong. Okay, you're good?
Yeah.
What about Tom? We got.
You wanna hear from Tom?
Yeah, we like hearing from him.
Make you drive here for nothing.
Sure. Tom Nelson, professional engineer with McCord Engineering. Yeah, fundamentally, really, the components of my plan stay exactly the same. The patio size changed, negligibly. Orientation is a little bit different, so we're still capturing a lot of that runoff and putting that into the underground detention system below the boardwalk. We had to adjust slightly the location of our backwash detention system just to work with the new pool and patio layout, but fundamentally all the components are the same. I think that's really it. I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Okay, that's fine. We gotta make sure you sign off on it. He's one of the important guys.
Thank you.
What else? There was something else.
Amy,
Oh,
your
with
response to
re-
your question.
One of the things that Amy brought up last time is the border of the pool to the
Yeah.
Montero's property line. That was kind of narrow last go around. Did the
Well,
pool?
it's
Yeah.
expanded over here, and it's bigger down there.
And I think the flip actually lends itself to where the crowds are gonna be at the finish line and all that, so they're gonna be less likely to come around to the other end. They'll
Okay.
be hanging out at the other
Yeah.
end.
We've
So that
expanded
flip
it
makes a
here,
lot of sense, I think.
and it's
Yeah.
further away here, and we preserve the crab apple.
Yeah, I think that makes a
And
lot
that
of
was,
sense.
it was a good suggestion they made.
Yeah.
It was easy for us to do it, and it
Yeah.
worked very well with the flipping of the pool.
Mhm, yeah.
In response to your question, Amy, James Reisig, our general manager, said there will be chaise lounges under the pool side of the pergola, which will be removed during competition.
Perfect, yeah.
And nobody's gonna be
Because it
back
will.
Yeah,
As a former gymnast, and I've done diving, it's,
Well, diving,
you don't
yeah.
want some bonehead being like,
Yeah.
"Ah," you know, you're, as you're preparing to
Exactly,
go.
not happening.
Just seeing a cracked head
No, that
happening
would
there.
not happen. So,
That's the mother in me.
I sense that.
Okay,
So, with that, I think we're in a position to close the hearing if you
well,
guys
let's open
have
up for
any
questions. Commissioners? Adam, will you go first?
Yeah, the only question I have is about the lighting over by the snack bar area. On one of your drawings, it looks like there's thin stranded lighting up there, but then on the other diagrams, it looks like you have posts right off the existing clubhouse before the boardwalk. Like on your light sail picture, you don't have any lighting, but on these other ones, you have kind of like the carnival style
Yeah.
strung up lights.
I think we're gonna have the catenary, those are catenary lights.
Right.
I learned that in the course of this application. And, and so I think we're going to have catenary, we have them there now,
Right.
and they will still be used under the sunshades.
Okay. Do those come off in the event of a flood?
Yes.
Okay.
There
They're
was
not.
storm.
There's a storm or whatever. Yeah, it's
No,
not on
they're-
the plan.
They're not FEMA compliant,
Yeah.
but they come down easily.
Should that be added to the flooding plan? Because I don't see them on that list.
We're happy to add that if that's something you want to condition and revise the flood plan.
Yeah, because we're gonna have Rich sign off on this too.
Yep.
I mean, we can always tweak this a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, you can tweak that. I mean, that's a good tweak. It's something we didn't think of.
Yeah. Okay, you good?
Yeah.
George?
Yeah, a couple things if I can, so that I at least am clear about. I'm thinking about access to and from the pool area and the men's locker room. Can you get to anywhere other than the pool through the locker room?
Mel, do you want to answer
No,
that?
no.
Because I think you're.
You gotta come up, Melanie.
Come on up
You're
here.
gonna
Mel Kernan will address that.
Yeah, you're right, you cannot. Yeah,
There's no other access, okay.
so here, that's it. There is an access through here, but you have to come back out into the pool
Into the
area to
pool.
come back out.
So if the pool is intended to be closed, you can't use the
Yeah.
locker room or the changing room and all that sort of thing, okay. And I was thinking about the peninsula, may I call it, that you have into the pool there. It looks like it's, in the one drawing, it looks like it's set up for tables and chairs, or?
No, not tables, we're sort of like lounge, low chairs with low tables, that kind of thing, just to be able to sit in here and watch the small children in the sun shelf.
I
Or
see.
look towards the, but more low tables and chairs rather than sort of, there's not enough distance here, so the dotted line that's around the entire perimeter of the pool is a 5-foot clear line that's required by the Department of Public Health. So we don't have room between the two sections of dotted lines to do any lounge chairs. We have to do
Okay.
shorter length chairs there so that we can maintain, that's sort of a clearance for the lifeguards that's required.
Good, okay, all right, so, and there won't be food service or
No,
cocktails?
no
sitting
food
out there?
service, it's not allowed by the Department of Public Health. You can't have food service inside the pool.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. What looked like a table, but anyway, good, okay. How about, I don't know who it's for, but when you remove the raised heaters, what are you gonna do with that space?
So what we're going to do is what's shown here is there are 3 residential grade heaters. They're small, they're very easy to disconnect, and they're very easy to move. They're very lightweight, and that should be part of the club's plan. And the reason being was multifold. First and foremost, the original sort of layout was the pool designer that we're working with didn't recommend them because he said if the heater's down, the whole pool is not heated, whereas with residential, If one heater's down, the residential units are much easier to maintain, get parts for, and also easier to disconnect and get out of the way. So when they're disconnected during a storm event, they'll be moved out and upstairs with everything else.
Okay, but the focus of my question is, what will you be doing with the space when you don't have raised heaters there? Or they,
So that's just a roof. So that's a building that it's a waterproof building that contains all the electrical and electronic
oh, okay,
controls.
so that remains there
So
and
we
will
have to
be,
keep the building, yeah.
okay, thank you, okay. And so the only access for the public, and I guess I would say for ladies in particular, will be what, one entrance near the pool
Yeah,
house?
so the main entrance is this entrance here, which is
Okay.
the one that will be the sign-in window area here.
Right.
By code, there's an occupancy load on the pool area plus the pool deck, and we have to make sure that we have the egress requirements out of the pool enclosure. So there's egress only gates that go here, and then there's one more here, and then that gets us to the required occupancy egress requirements for the building code.
Okay, and those egresses can be used under ordinary circumstances?
So they would be monitored by the club, but yeah, they wouldn't be able to come in this way, you'd only be able to go out that way.
Okay, understood, good, thank you.
How do you get up to the roof to get the heaters down? Are there stairs?
But the heaters are on the ground.
They're not up there anymore.
Oh,
These
they're on the
heaters,
ground now?
yeah, these
Yeah.
heaters are up here.
Yeah,
They're
that's
not
what,
there anymore.
that's what, okay.
That was moved last week or last month.
I see.
This artist running didn't just get
That's what
up
I
there
thought.
as well. And when you're talking about load, that means like 250 people. It's not, we're not talking pounds, right? When you said maximum load.
The way it's calculated is the deep end has fewer, I think it's maybe 10 people, 10 people
Right.
per square foot, and then the shallow end has 25. Then you don't include the 5-foot clearance around the pool because that's empty. And then you have a sort of an assembly occupancy load on the pool deck. And then that gets you the sort of occupancy load, if you will, the number of people. And then that gets the plumbing code and the toilets and all the other things that you have to meet based
Okay.
on that.
It's not your first pool you designed.
No.
Good. You're good, George?
Yes, thank you.
Amy?
Good.
You're good? Okay. Anything else I'm missing, gentlemen? No?
Anyone from the public? I
Okay.
don't think so, but you can.
Anybody from the public domain like to speak to this application? Looks like you get your whole team with you, Bob. You packed the room.
We're the audience.
All right.
All set.
All right, anything before we attempt to close this hearing?
I've got nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, so in terms of just follow-up, which is condition approval, is we're gonna get sign off for this from Rich or Rick.
Yep.
The construction CDs are gonna match what we're doing.
Yep.
And then everything else is standard practice, gets signed off by structural engineers.
And add catenary lighting to the flood
Right,
preparedness
that
plan.
was this, yeah.
Exactly,
Put that on
yeah.
there. That's cool. All right. With that said, I would entertain a motion to close this hearing. George makes a motion, Adam makes a second. All those in favor? Fantastic. We're closed.
Thank you very much.
And in terms of timing, where does this fall in your, I mean, these guys don't need this for
Right, it's
6
likely the
months, right?
commission will deliberate at its next meeting, which might be next week, it might not be next week, and then decision probably the first week of October, first or second week of October.
And you're not in any real rush for this.
Well, we'd
right?
like to have it because it's interesting, when you do the construction timeline, it's really nice to have this approval by October. But, yeah, we'd like it by mid-October if possible.
Great. You're not putting a shovel in the ground for.
No, we're not
11
putting a
months.
shovel on the ground, but we've got a lot of work to do.
I know. Very good. All right, cool.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for a nice presentation, buddy. Next item up, continuation of public hearing regarding coastal site plan review number 29A as an apple, flood damage prevention application number 23A, Daniel and Hildi, Maclean at 25 Contentment Island Road. Proposal to construct a new terrace and patio areas at the rear of the residence, construct a new balcony and access way to the existing basement and to raise a portion of the roof and to perform related site development activities within regulated areas. The 2.88 plus or minus acres subject property is on the southeast side of Contentment Island Road, approximately 0.3 miles south of its intersection with Tokeneke Beach Drive. They're shown as Assessor's Map number 68 of Lot 1 in the R1 zone. The public hearing opened on July 26th. We didn't do anything with this one, right?
Yeah, the commission opened the hearing on, let's see, July 26th, and continued the hearing after the commission had some concerns regarding the comprehensive nature of the application. The applicant came before the commission with modifications to the existing house on the property, which included a new patio area, and a second floor addition to the house. They had talked about a phase 2 of the project,
Right,
which
I'm sorry.
included a new motor court driveway, walkways, and stormwater management. They're coming back before the commission now with that comprehensive package. So not only the patio and second floor addition on the house, but now what they referred to as phase 2 of the project, including the motor court driveway and walkways.
And a septic, right? There was a
Septic.
cha- a
And the septic,
change.
correct.
Yes.
Yes.
This one, I came in late and I called it phase 1A.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So the application was originally referred to DPW, our in-house engineer Darren Ostafine, the health department, as well as Connecticut Deep. Connecticut Deep Department of Energy and Environmental Protection submitted comments for the record on July 19th. And Mr. Ostafine submitted comments for the record dated July 18th.
So he has not seen these
So
yet.
So he did review the most recent plans submitted to the commission, which were distributed in your packets. He submitted comments for the record on September 2nd. I believe that was the date your packets went out.
Yeah.
So the emails that we've been sending you today are reflective of Mr. Ostafine's comments and the changes that the
Yeah, they came
applicant
like
has
3 times this
made
afternoon.
to his plans today in
Mhm.
response to those comments.
These are ones that we got at 5:17 and 5:18 today?
Correct.
Oh, I didn't
That's
see that.
correct.
Yeah.
And-
I got it.
Right. So not the most perfectly ideal situation. Mr. Ostafine has not had the opportunity to review the most recently revised plans based on his comments.
Yeah, town hall closes at 5:15, right?
Yep.
We do believe that the plans are in substantial conformance with the flood damage protection and stormwater management regulations, section 820 and 880 of the regulations. What else? We have John Granicola of Rizzoli Engineers here tonight with the architect for the project, Harvey Weber. So John, why don't you take it away?
And there was another gentleman here last time, he was not here.
Different gentleman, that's correct.
Okay,
Right,
it's the
that
same
was
firm.
Ben Graviello was representing Rizzoli Engineering last time. Tonight we have John.
Got it. You can go to the podium, sir, thank you. It's this microphone's over there that you need.
I gotta apologize to the board.
Let's go to the.
No, you have to go to the mic, please, at the podium and give your name, spell your
I
name
need
for
to
me, please.
apologize. I'm a little hard of hearing and I forgot my hearing aids tonight, so if you'll
We'll
forgive
yell.
me, if I ask you to repeat something, it's,
Okay. Please just state your name and name and position for the record.
yes, sir.
Spell your name,
And we'll spell the name correctly.
please.
Okay, first name is John, middle initial P. Last name is Giancola, spelled Giancola. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Rizzoli Planning and Engineering.
Great. And so last time when we saw this application, there was talk about a second phase, and we called it phase 1, phase 2, then it ended up being phase 1 and phase 1A, because they were on top of each other. And what we wanted to do was look at the whole thing in its entirety. If you remember, I came in late on it,
Well, that's
but that was the
reflected in the
feedback.
plans that you've received. Now, we made some minor changes to these, but not materially that you'd be able to notice. The town engineer wanted me to show some.
You gotta stay close to Margaret.
Yeah, you know,
Carry
you want
this?
to pick up the microphone and bring it with you, just pull that right out of there. Perfect. And then you can walk 20 feet in any direction.
I'm not as sophisticated as the gentleman before me. This is just creating an existing new roof over the existing building. The two, they refer to as patios in the back. They're really not patios. One's a deck, and the other is going to be a balcony. We're going to have open joints, and there's a trap rock bed below them. So they're basically, the runoff from these are going to be handled in the ground behind these little small retaining walls. The biggest item on here is the new driveway and turnaround is going to come up to, right now, there's no access to the front of this house. The only way you can get in the house is from the side. This is going to be a new driveway and turnaround for the occupants. What we've done is we've split it into 3 different systems, only because of the amount that we needed in order to compensate for the 50-year storms up to the 50. We put part of half of this cul-de-sac, turnaround if you want to call it, into this system, which is system number 1. We put the other half of the turnaround into this system, which is system number 2, which is connected in this way. And we put the other part of the driveway from here to here over into system number 3. All 3 of these systems, based on the testing we did out there, which were witnessed by the health department, we comply with the requirement in the engineering department of being 2 feet above either ledge or groundwater. There was no actual groundwater when we tested, but some of the holes did have mottling, which is an indication of a high groundwater table. We did take care and make sure that all the systems agree to being the correct height above those restrictive layers. The septic system, the same. The septic was split into 2 different areas with a 50-foot separation, which you're allowed to do according to the state health code. The system is sized for the 5 bedrooms that will be in the house. I believe it's 4 now, and there's 1 bedroom that's a question mark. This system has been sized for all 5 of the bedrooms in the house.
And the
gotta
tank,
tell you, it looks-
the tank's location is much closer to the house.
I'm sorry?
The tank and the
Oh,
pumping
yeah,
chamber.
the tank is being located outside of the flood hazard zone. If you notice, they're over here. That flood hazard zone is right in, here it is, the 100-foot.
Uh-huh.
We're beyond the 100-foot line. We made sure, the only thing we couldn't do because of where the plumbing is, where it comes out of the building, it's still gonna exit the same way, but it's gonna be going over to the new tanks, and it's a tank and a pump chamber.
Yep.
The town engineer had some comments today, which I have to tell you, we just received them this morning. I went as fast as I could to respond to all of them. And I think I've done that successfully. I mean, I can go through every one of them if you like, but suffice it to say that I think I satisfied the engineering requirements.
John, is there going to be more hole ramming? Is it just blasting? Is it a mix?
You know, I want to say I know the answer to that, but I don't. I don't know if there's going to be blasting. I doubt it's going to be blasting. I haven't heard anything about that, but do you know if?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can get the answer for you. I just don't know the answer to that. What I've seen so far was all done with hammers and that type of thing. I didn't see any blasting out there.
Look like it's pretty well built on rock.
I'm sorry?
It looks like the existing house is built on rock, so I would be surprised if you don't need some blasting.
Yeah, if any commission members had the opportunity to go out and take a look at the site over the past
Yeah.
week or so, you will have noticed that there perhaps has been some chip hammering going on the site, some removal of some vegetation, the front yard, in the vicinity of where the motor court would be located.
That's correct.
Do we know what's Do we know what's going on there?
This is all part of the demo that's allowed.
I think that would be, the
Generous?
permit, the permit that was pulled was for interior demolition of the house, which is ongoing.
Right.
You saw the big dumpster there. There was certainly some work with test pits that your group did to try to find appropriate locations for the septic and the drainage.
That's correct.
But there was, it appeared, some hole ramming that has occurred over the past few days.
I tell you, the couple of times I've been there in the last couple of weeks, there hasn't been any rock excavation that I'm aware of. I don't know, they probably did it before I got there. I've been involved in the project for the last 3 weeks.
And the other gentleman who was here, the other gentleman here last time, which was a month ago, he was involved with it.
Yes.
How
It
long?
was Ben Graviano, I don't know, a couple of months, I guess.
Okay. It still seems.
And we have not been able to see the comments from Darren yet about his review of this.
Well, we did email the comments to you this
Yeah,
afternoon,
but-
but that's the extent of what you've seen, yes.
Just as the new guy,
Go right
two
ahead.
questions. Does this get peer reviewed outside of
No,
Ostrify?
no, it's in-house.
Just in-house?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's residential. Outside it really goes to, but if we can call for a peer review for an outside guy,
Okay.
if it's above quote-unquote Darren's pay grade.
Okay.
But he usually makes that call, because he's ex officio member of the board.
The board,
Right.
the commission.
So what we try to do is, you can imagine there's, on any random year, there's about 600 building and zoning permits that come in. About 1/3 of those require drainage in some way, shape, or form that we have them review in-house.
Gotcha.
Anything more substantial, whether it's big commercial project, big mixed-use project, way beyond a routine house, we send that out. Usually it's to Joe Canis at Ty and Bond, but occasionally we've used other engineers. So in this case, what happened was the revised plans came in, let's call it right before Labor Day
Yeah.
weekend. So, it gets, nothing happens for 4 days, so Darren gave you his comments Thursday, I believe, or something like that, Thursday or Friday. And
We
you,
didn't get it until this morning, I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
they didn't receive them until this morning. I believe Darren submitted comments to our department on Friday. Town hall's closed on Friday. We made sure that John and Musole had the comments by Monday morning, by today. Well, today's actually Tuesday morning, with a holiday. So, yes, they received the comments this morning, so.
I worked as fast as I could to get answers for you.
No, I mean, I get it, but we can't rush to close the hearing. Everyone's working fast, but, we can only do things that are proper. I'm not rushing a house just because. Right, and, we got 5 commissioners there. We had a problem with it last time. We told them again last time we're not gonna rush it, and we're still rushing it. I mean, these guys can't work overtime.
well, you have what, a year of house renovations in front of you?
Yeah.
You're gonna be working on that house well into 2023.
Right. So,
Actually, the exterior changes will go quicker than the interior changes.
oh, okay. So it's not gonna be habitable for,
For about a year. It's a substantial renovation.
okay.
What we can do is, pass all of these plans have been passed on to Mr. Ostafine for his review at this point. Just because of the nature of the timing with this, he, of course, hasn't had the opportunity to review the plans. We can have him review and sign off on the plans, continue the public hearing tonight to either, we can talk about dates, but have Darren sign off on it, keep the hearing open to make sure everything is okay with him, and then, the commission can go ahead and close the hearing on it.
Okay. So why don't you two guys finish your presentation, whatever else you want to tell us about the changes
Yeah,
from last time?
let's correct, yeah. We're pretty much done. I mean, I can go into details if you want, but that's
So-
more of an engineering type of issue.
So the changes on this plan, which is phase 2, the main parts of this plan, the main components are new septic system,
That's
which is a
correct.
5-bedroom septic system.
And
New-
by the way, we're taking this existing system out that's in the back here now.
Okay, the system that is waterward of the house
That's correct.
will be
But
abandoned.
the old ones are over here.
Okay. New drainage system,
That's
which
correct.
will take water from the new house,
That's
let's
correct.
call it a new house,
Well, it's taking water from the driveway now. The house is.
and the new driveway,
Yes.
and putting it into underground cultex that you've done test pits for, and to make sure that those cultex won't fill with water. Right.
And it's a minimal amount of site grading in here. It's absolute minimal.
Right. It-
Basically, whatever we take out for the Caltex and the septic system, we're just gonna gently spread it over the area around it.
Do you think you're gonna need to truck in any dirt?
No.
Okay. Could be some blasting, could be some hole ramming, or a mix, depending on what you find out in the field.
You're
You're not sure?
I can't give you a definite answer if the grading for the rock removal is at the level of that cul-de-sac yet. I can't tell you that. It's pretty close,
Okay.
if I had to guess.
Because in the cul-de-sac, there's a ledge rock right smack in the middle of it.
Well, it's partially on it, and it's partially off. If you look at the actual
And I'm-
turnaround,
I'm
the area that
calling
was
it 2, 3
excavated is
o'clock,
over in
right?
this area.
I'm sorry, sir, you need to use the
Pull it back.
microphone near
Oh,
your
I'm
mouth.
sorry.
Thank you.
I thought your hearing was better than mine. Yeah, they took the rock out primarily in this area. I don't recall any excavation in this area. I mean, those trees are still there, you know.
The Coltex system number 3, what does that serve? What's connected to that?
The 2 lower basins, there was no other way to get the 2 lower basins here except into that system.
So it goes from the driveway
That's correct.
all the way to the other side of the property?
That's correct also.
And these other 2 that are closed, they're also for the driveway?
Those are taking care of the other half of the cul-de-sac up in here.
Okay, what about the house? Is there any runoff for the house?
The house is as is. We're not touching the house as far as its drainage.
You're just adding different roofing, and then you're taking away a lot of driveway. And you make indication in your letter that the removal of the impervious surface will accommodate the extra runoff from the roof. Is that what you're implying in that letter?
I'd have to look at that again. I don't recall that.
It's,
As far as I know, the house is not connected to the system.
You know, you're saying, you just made the statement that you're not changing the house, and you, yes, you're not changing the footprint of the house, I agree. But it looks like you're just changing the roof over that one
That's
existing
just the
foundation.
roof, yes.
Yes.
Drainage from the house is as is.
Question, just a procedural question for us. At what point does the viability of this septic system get looked at by our health department?
You know, it's fun, that's a good question. I was just gonna ask John the same question. Have you started working with the health department on getting approval for the new septic system
No,
or
my
not yet?
understanding was we needed to come before your board before we could submit to them.
But did they witness the?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
They went out, Mindy went out with you, or?
Yes, she did.
Okay, good.
And she loved it. She came back and sat in her, watched the waves come in.
So, okay, so that's good. They started that, that's the correct way, is you get the health department out there to witness the on-site conditions firsthand,
Yeah,
which is
okay.
important.
And we invited her to witness a perk test, but she allowed us to do those as engineers.
So, we don't have anything in writing, but you wouldn't expect them to go too far in light of the fact that things could change as a result of the hearing or neighbor comments or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I think they're on the right path here.
Let me put your minds at
Put
ease.
that a little bit closer.
Let me put your minds at ease. I've been designing septic systems since 1976. I'm also a licensed septic installer. I don't build septic systems any longer, but I did them for 16 years. So I've been in the trenches, I know what to look for, I know how to build the system, and ergo, I know how to design them.
Good, no.
And none of my systems have ever failed.
There you go.
That I can go on the record, ever.
Jeremy, this one says here, stormwater management of the site appears to be handled by disconnection of existing impervious surfaces. I don't get that.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. But I'm not quite sure what you meant by that.
I didn't write it. John wrote it.
Can you explain that, sir?
I'm sorry.
In your letter, it says stormwater management from the site appears to be handled by disconnection of the existing impervious surface.
There isn't a single dry well or catch basin on that property as of now.
Okay,
So it's all disconnected.
And when you say disconnected, it means the
It's-
roof leaders and
it's
gutters from the
natural-
house just run on the lawn.
That's correct. It just runs on the land right now. So we're actually
Oh,
gonna
you're not
control some.
proposing disconnecting. I read that as you're proposing disconnecting certain things.
that's what I said too.
Okay, understood.
So now you're gonna handle both water quality and somewhat limited amount of water quality, or quantity.
Yes. Well, up to the 50-year
Yeah, for
storm.
the 50-year storm.
But the word that it appears, it either is or is not.
He couldn't find any dry wells or any culverts or anything on the property, so he assumes it, but you can't say
Yeah.
one way or another.
He's saying existing conditions appear to be handled,
Okay.
basically.
So just, the gutters just run out on the ground, like you did at your, 1920s house.
Yeah, my old house.
Right. Put that little white thing at the bottom
Yeah.
to shoot it away from the house.
And put a little sprinkler thing when it really rains,
Right.
like that with the sprinkler, and your kid jumps in it.
Jeremy,
Okay.
what do you do about the whole ramming that's been going on? Is that permissible?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because we did get a concern, and so they called our office. Fred and I went out earlier today. Fred spoke to the contractor and said, look, this project's still being reviewed by planning and zoning. Stop the hole ramming till we can figure out what may end up where, what plans we're looking at. Stop hole ramming. The good news is they had not brought in or regraded the property. They took down, what do you think, 2 or 3 trees, but clearly hole ramming had been done. So we asked the contractor, and I think,
As far as I know, he stopped.
yeah, that's what
I've
we're.
been there a couple of times and didn't see any activity.
You spoke to John about that, or
No, we have not.
that gentleman?
Okay, okay.
And then,
So, yeah, we said, let's see how this all plays out first. And again, there's no rush on that. That will finish quicker than the other part of the project.
yeah,
Okay,
at the risk of being super annoying, so we've got no stormwater management for the existing residents.
Correct.
And under the regulations, that's permissible?
And then, right, the stormwater management regulations went in about 10, 12 years ago. Mr. Maclean's house was built 25, 30? 1925. So, predates everything. Again, here we have the interesting fact, it's a coastal property. So, if left untouched, any rain that falls on this property is likely just to roll along the lawn on a day like today right into Long Island Sound.
so you don't want to contain it.
Right.
Right, so they're dealing with the water quality, the first inch, having these Contentment units underground will cleanse the water, if you will. They're holding back a little water, which can't hurt, and then, yes, making things better overall, no doubt about it, from a drainage standpoint. And arguably a septic standpoint as well, this septic system,
I gotta tell you, the soil that I saw out there was excellent soil. The health department will confirm that too.
Right.
Very
So-
good. And we got an 1 in 10 perk, which is pretty good.
so we're gonna have a new
So-
septic system, a
Correct.
new drainage system,
That's correct.
and the only activity that's getting closer to the water is actually the abandonment
Yeah,
of the
taking out
existing
the old
septic
system.
system. So the new
Right.
septic system will be on, I'll call it the
Always.
landward side of the house, much further away from,
It's about the middle of the lot.
Right,
toward
much
the-
further away
toward
from the center.
road more. Yeah.
correct?
Yes,
On both
correct.
sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't seem too worried about the septic system. Okay.
This
With
original,
regards-
this original system, by the way, was put in 1954. It's about 8 years after I was born. Still working, I guess.
With regards to the whole ramming versus blasting, sometimes they always say whole ramming, we allow them like 1 or 2 days of blasting if they need it, to be determined.
Right, in a case like this, what's interesting is, if you look at where Mr. McLean's property is and the Tokeneke Beach Club, there, if you go to one property, you can see the other. In this case, I would imagine that the amount of hole ramming remaining, probably not a lot, but I'm not an engineer, versus hole ramming sounds like this, and it echoes down in Tokeneke, versus blasting is quite boom.
Right.
sometimes the commission says, great, you've said no home ramming or no blasting, fine.
Right.
If you need a blasting permit, work it out with the fire marshal. Sometimes that's better for the neighbors. It's a little less,
But do we want to bake into the resolution, they can have 1 or 2 days of blessing if they need it, is where I'm going. Because sometimes we do that,
sometimes that's,
because he doesn't know.
doesn't help, so I think we can
Versus
keep it a
getting
little
a
open-ended.
Yeah, versus getting a definitive answer,
Right.
because that's not easy, apparently. All right, so what do we want? Do we want to keep this thing open until, we got it, don't want to close anything until Darren signs off on it.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
There's not a person here that wants to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Don't rush Darren when he gets to what he gets to, right?
So the next available meeting probably is the 27th. Gives Darren time to review it. Gives the chairman a little time, if there are further changes, who knows, maybe not. If you have any feedback on the blasting question, that would be great.
I don't, but I will get them.
Okay. So we would need, John, a continuation from you to get us to the 27th?
You need a letter from me?
Yeah, just a. You can
Same
say
as I gave you the
tonight,
last? Okay.
And send us an email tomorrow authorizing the continuation of the public hearing.
Okay. All right, so we're going to continue this hearing until, do you have anything to add tonight?
No, only if you want me to answer something. I mean, I could just show you what it's going to look
I'm
like.
sorry, you have to go up to the
Yeah, why don't you do that real quick?
And you have
just
to
show us
introduce
that before
yourself,
we-
please.
I'm Harvey Weber from Weber & Associates Architects.
Thank you.
So this is the view facing the water, and it's here because the setback line 100 feet from the water runs right through the house. So this is sort of variance territory. And so a lot more windows on this side of the house, a little steeper pitch on the roof, and trying to maximize the view from all the rooms. So there's a existing terrace over here, which we're changing the staircase to make it safer and easier to walk up. And that'll also segue to the terrace adjacent to the family room. This is the master bedroom. There's a roof over this right now, but you can't get to it. We're turning it into a balcony, and these 2 rooms here will have balconies as well.
So right where your hand is, between the windows and that wall, that's what, a 5-foot terrace or something?
Over here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I have other views from other angles, and then roof pitch if you wanted to see that. So,
Right, that's the 3D I was looking for. Okay.
so there's a view from this side. And from this side. And this is the entrance to the house, which you'd never know. It's like going into the basement. And I recommended to them, you need a front door to this house. When the wholesale changes to it, there's not even an address there. It's off the kitchen. So the entrance is now going in through what was, I guess, the nanny's bedroom. And this is on the north side, off the court, the new circular driveway. So that'll be here with an eyebrow entrance over here on this side of the house. This is where you can see the pitch of the roof that was here before. We're still well below the 30-foot distance that we're allowed to have. That's that existing door here. There was no way to get groceries into the house. It was very, very hard for Hildi to deal with this.
So then we're not changing the footprint of the house?
Not at all, nothing. It's the exact same footprint. We're just reconfiguring the rooms inside to make it just more user-friendly for them.
And raising the roof?
Yeah.
Which is the same.
Since they've been there 30, 40 years, it's good to have someone who's going to come in and think outside the box and say, here's how you could use it now. We have a very nice living room, but it's a very low ceiling. Homes 50 years ago had 8-foot ceilings, and it's nicer now to have a 9 or 10-foot ceiling. We can achieve that by doing this. So here's an existing roof over here. We're just raising it. So it's the same footprint of roof, just slightly steeper, which is more contemporary now. Homes back then had a dated look because most homes then had 4-on-12 pitches. Now you resort to going, 9-on-12, 12-on-12. It just looks better. So that's what we're trying to do here. with this.
Jeremy,
Yes.
is any of the additional volume in the setback area?
No, it's actually, what Harvey mentioned is the 100-foot from the coast, but this house is well within the property, but it's 100 feet from the coast.
Coastal.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I could go back to the site plan to show you that line.
He's like, how'd this slip by?
Exactly. Wait a second. It was more than 20
I just left.
38 feet isn't 40.
You submitted it 2 days
I'm
ago.
gonna follow, the end of my pen is the 100-foot line.
That's the arc that follows the water here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So anything we do, like if the house had to get knocked down, we'd have to move the whole thing back. But all we're trying to do is just, put these balconies and terraces on the side to make it pretty.
Got it. Okay. Any questions for the architect? Good, got them all? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, we're gonna continue this until,
September 27th, Tuesday 27th, here in this room at 7:30
I'm sorry,
PM.
22nd, you said.
27.
Oh, 27. See, I told you.
you can come to 22nd if you want to.
Three weeks from today.
No, that's okay, I could use the extra time.
We know that. All right. Next item.
Thank you. Thank you, John. We have this plugged in for.
All right, we have Mr. Keating up. Next item up on our agenda, proposal to opt out of accessory apartment requirements set forth in Section 6 of Public Act Number 21-29. This legal notice is the Darien Planning and Zoning Commission's official notice of the intent, of the Town of Darien to initiate the process by which a municipality may opt out of the provision of Section 6 of Public Act 21-29 regarding accessory apartments. We debated this topic, I think 2 meetings ago, when we were in the auditorium.
Correct.
Dave-
We talked a little briefly, Dave Keating, who was here that night, we talked about Public Act 21-29, which is in your packets, which specifically gives communities the ability to opt out of what is now, in essence, a state mandate regarding accessory apartments. Dave Keating's here tonight to talk a little bit more, but one of the provisions, if the commission wishes to opt out, is to have a hearing like we're having tonight. And then after that, if the commission decides to go ahead, you'd have to have a vote. It has to pass this commission by at least 2/3, so we need at least a 2/3 vote. And then it has to go before the RTM. The RTM would need to vote to opt out before the end of 2022. If they don't, the state law goes into effect and we end up with whatever the state has put together. So in this case, we're here tonight to have the required public hearing on the opt-out for accessory apartments. Dave Keating, who, as you know, has worked on our affordable housing plan, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, has worked with us closely on developing reasons. He's done a little bit of a PowerPoint here on, and he's also included a memo in your packets outlining possible reasons for the opt-out. Because not only does the commission have to vote to opt out, you have to very clearly enunciate your reasons.
Now, the last time when we talked about this, that was a general meeting on it, was it?
That was a general meeting, which
Okay.
the commission gave us direction on which way you want to go. The consensus was, yes, let's prepare and work towards an opt-out. And over the August break, they pulled together the memo, we talked about it. He did a lot of work in looking at what other communities have done. And I think, Dave, if I recall, we saw many communities had opted out. We did not notice, I think there were very few that haven't opted out, actually.
I think Stanford and.
Stanford is still
Norwalk
kicking around the
out there.
idea. Norwalk is kicking around, but
A lot of them are in the process.
a lot of them are in the process or finishing up the process. Derby was one, I think, that was sent your way. Westport opted out.
No, they never
I'm not
do.
sure. Wilton was in the process.
Yes.
Thomaston was in the process. There's a lot that are going through what we're going through right now.
Okay,
And
so,
now that September is here and August vacations are over, there'll be a lot of these public hearings.
okay, so what we did the last time, we did this, the opt-out provision for parking,
Parking for multifamily.
and was that was the only one?
That was the only one
That was
where
the only one,
the
okay.
commission voted, went to the RTM passed it 81-0,
Yep.
and the commission developed its own regulations.
There was, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Housing Committee was very adamant about that
Yes.
one too. So that's what we have to do. We have to do this again, like we did for the parking. Eventually, our plan is to come up with our own thing, and then we make our vote, and then we send it to the RTM, and they either agree with us or don't agree with us. Mr. Keating, please introduce, take it away, sir.
Yep, Dave Keating, acting as a consultant on behalf of the town of Darien. I did have a memo dated September 1. I hope all of you have received that and had a chance to look through that. It just goes through some of the reasons that I suggest that the commission consider to opt out. They include the sanitary sewer limitations. As you know, Darien's sewage waste is directed to the Stamford facility. Darien has no control over the capacity of that facility, the operation of that facility, or the limitations that might be imposed upon that facility. If there's a substantial increase in the number of dwelling units, there would logically be an increase in the amount of sewage waste. And if we can't control how that gets processed, that could be a serious health issue. So going the way the state statute would allow would be a very broad brush approach and allow a lot of dwelling units all at the same time, which could have adverse impacts.
Can Stanford deny our sewer that was, can Stanford deny our sewage we're sending to them?
I'm sorry?
Can Stanford deny the sewage that we're sending to them?
The contract is renewable. It's every 5 or 10 years. There is a limitation on how much waste Darien can send there. We are underneath that cap at this moment. Every now and then, because of rainfall, we exceed the cap, but we have to fix that with extra stormwater that goes into the sewage system. But if Stamford population increases, they would need to take care of their own people first. And at some point, if that capacity is exceeded, Darien would not have any control over whether the facility gets expanded or not. So it's a health issue to be considered.
So then Darien would be forced to consider their own pumping station on their own property within the bounds of Darien? Because right now it comes down to what, Norotan Bay, and then gets pumped under the water to Stamford, correct?
Correct.
So then, worst case scenario, then we have to figure out what to do with it at the end of our line.
Right, and the properties that have septic systems, on-site septic systems,
Yeah.
would not necessarily be an issue. Part of Public Act 21-29 does direct health officials to be fairly lenient on how they treat accessory apartments, and not to be as strict on the limitations that they impose, where normally for a detached structure, they would require a separate detached septic system, or the number of bedrooms is one of the factors. So for the on-site septic systems, that's not an issue. But much of Darien is served by sanitary sewer.
But they also, part of the act, they wanted us to be able to allow private water treatment plants on site, which is similar to what happens up in Dutchess County and Putnam County, New York. But keep going, you're doing great.
Just one quick question. Do we have a sense of how far under the cap we are? Like we, on average, we're 75%, or
No,
we're?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
That's,
There is an annual cap, and then there is maybe a daily or a weekly cap.
Okay, okay,
But I
we
don't
got
know
the sewer
the
commission
numbers.
for that.
okay.
Okay.
The next item I had on the list was local control. Public Act 21-29 is part of the intent there is to create a substantial increase in the supply of dwelling units throughout each community in the state. And this broad brush approach is fine in some instances, but not in all circumstances. The Darien Planning and Zoning Commission knows this community and knows the physical aspects of the community and also the thinking of the people in the community much better than the people up in Hartford who write the statutes. And it's appropriate that there be local control so that you can adopt regulations that are in keeping with what this community is willing to accept and is able to accommodate as far as accessory apartments. Parking is another issue. We have a need for on-site parking because it would be inappropriate to have homeowners or residents of accessory apartments being dependent on on-street parking, because on-street parking, although it is allowed, is in general, is during the winter months prohibited so that the town can effectively and safely plow the streets of snow. So it would not be appropriate to allow accessory apartments without sufficient on-site parking. Public Act 21-29 limits the Commission's ability to require safe and adequate on-site parking for accessory apartments. It limits it to one parking space for studio and one bedroom apartments, and no more than two parking spaces required if it's larger than a one bedroom. But many times the existing principal dwelling unit on the property does not have on-site parking that complies with the current regulation because of the era when that house was developed. The fourth reason I have listed here is regulations specifically for Darien. Per your directions in the past, I have started working on draft regulations that would allow accessory apartments in compliance with the state statute in case the commission decides not to opt out, or in case the RTM does not get a 2/3 vote to opt out, so that at least the Planning and Zoning Commission would have some regulations that you could have a public hearing on that would comply with the provisions of Public Act 21-29. I've also started working on draft regulations that are less permissive than the Public Act, that are more likely to be acceptable to this commission and to the community as a whole, that have more restrictions in them. And we can work on that, but it's very site-specific to Darien. We could not adopt those regulations unless the commission opts out of the requirement of 21-29. Jeremy asked me to address one issue that came up in a correspondence from the public, and that was the distinction between accessory apartments and accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. The state statutes define accessory apartments as being a secondary or ancillary home accommodations, and that they include kitchen facilities, food preparation area, and that they comply with the building code and fire safety code as applicable. The building code and fire safety code treat the second dwelling unit on the property just the same as they would this first dwelling unit. They don't consider it a multifamily property or multifamily dwelling unless there's 3 or more living accommodations. The term accessory dwelling units is not mentioned in the state statutes at all. It is not defined in the state statutes. People have started using it in lieu of the words accessory apartments, or meaning the same thing, and I've tried to avoid doing that in any of the correspondence that I've had, just to avoid any confusion. I think accessory dwelling units is a term of art that has become more popular, and I think it's also become a term of marketing, because companies out west started manufacturing housing units that were standalone dwellings. They had living space, sleeping space, kitchen space, bathroom space. They were a self-contained dwelling unit, a manufactured home. Used to be called a mobile home. Some of them were in the style of a freight container that was converted into a dwelling unit. Some of them were in the style of a tiny home. So I've avoided using the term accessory dwelling units just because it's not mentioned in the state statutes. I don't think an accessory dwelling unit, by definition, would necessarily be a standalone structure. By the words accessory dwelling unit, it just means a second living accommodations. It doesn't necessarily mean a standalone, separate, detached structure. I think if the commission does adopt regulations that allow for a second dwelling unit on the property, we need to make sure not to refer to that as accessory apartment. And the reason for that is because if the commission opts out of the accessory apartment provisions under 21-29, then 2 years from now, and then we adopt regulations that are different, either procedurally different or they have more limitations, then 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, I don't want there to be any confusion where somebody reads our accessory apartment regulations and say, well, these don't comply with the state statutes, and therefore they're void. Even if we included a paragraph in there that said, we opted out of the we opted out of the accessory apartments requirement, and so these secondary dwelling units, or whatever we end up calling them, are not in compliance with the provisions of 21-29, but that's okay because we opted out. People will still overlook that, and they'll still argue that the regulations are void.
So we have to call it something
So I want to avoid
different.
using the term accessory apartments if you adopt something different than what the state provision has.
So you don't want to call it an accessory apartment?
If
we
they're
adopt-
different than what the state mandates.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just call them ADUs or.
But the
whatever.
term accessory dwelling units, accessory apartments, they're often used interchangeably. I have not seen an industry standard that said, this is one thing, this is something different. The definition in the state statutes is very broad and all-encompassing, and then there's no definition of accessory dwelling units in the statutes.
Don't we just call ours mother-in-law suites?
I'm sorry?
Just call ours mother-in-law
Yeah,
suites.
mother-in-law suites is another term for them, granny flats is another term for them.
Because then we have to
We could
review to
we
make
could
sure it
we could
applies
define
to
an
fair
ADU
housing.
then,
Then
right?
we
Like
just
I hear
fail.
apartments, I'm thinking basement
That
apartment.
fail.
All at once. You're all talking at once, please.
Sorry.
Is
One
it-
at a time.
So accessory
Thank you.
apartments are more like basement apartments in a structure that exists, where an accessory dwelling unit is more like a separate standalone structure.
It's, I think the big trigger is the kitchen.
The kitchen.
Yeah, it's, the whole thing is the kitchen.
Yeah,
Because you can have a pool
you can
house
cook
with
it.
a bedroom.
Call it an ADU, but no
But
kitchen.
David's comment is that there is no such distinction.
Yeah,
Right.
we could
Yeah,
define it if we were gonna opt out and then create our own regulations, right?
Yeah, we got a couple of lawyers sitting right here and how to define stuff.
This gotta work.
Yeah. Okay.
The state statutes say that the accessory apartments regulations that you need to adopt, unless you opt out, would be for a second dwelling unit
With the kitchen.
in the existing dwelling, attached to the existing dwelling, or separate and detached from the existing dwelling. So it says, be very broad and general, and it doesn't make that distinction.
And there's no, there's no affordable provision for it.
That's one of the things
the
that's
whole-
prohibited unless you opt out.
Right.
But if you opt out, then you could adopt regulations that say you can create a second dwelling unit, but it must be affordable under the state statutes, so that we are encouraging affordable housing units as opposed to just more units that are lower in price than the market range. Lower in price than the existing market, because there'd be more of them, but they would still be well above affordable standards in Darien.
So we can make ours affordable by,
If we opt out first.
wow, that's dynamite, okay, I didn't know.
And now, that's one of the things that I've included in the draft that I've been working on. I think that the public in general would say, if they're going to be limited to being affordable, then it's much more likely to be acceptable in the community than if they're just more market rate housing that increases the
Did
number
I
of
also
dwelling
read
units.
that the limit on the deed was just 10 years for affordable for accessory dwelling versus 30 in a typical, is that correct?
That would be the minimum requirement.
Minimum
would be 10.
requirement. Okay.
Yeah.
So a homeowner that was potentially thinking of creating an affordable accessory dwelling unit, whatever we're gonna call it, they're thinking of a 10-year commitment rather than a 30-year commitment.
I would think that the town would be better to have it a 30-year commitment, so we would continue to have it as an affordable unit.
Oh, because it
all
wouldn't
that time.
qualify on.
But it's a policy decision for the
Yep,
commission,
got it, okay.
not my choice.
Okay.
But you're right, there is the normal requirement under 8-30G is 30 years, but under this provision of the definition of an affordable accessory apartment,
Is 10.
it says 10
Not less
years.
than 10.
Yeah, it says
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
So the next possible reason would be for historic structures. There's no provision under 21-29 for the zoning regulation to take special notice of those historic structures. If the commission opts out, then the commission can require that special recognition be given for historic structures or historic neighborhoods. And the state statutes are very clear that we cannot just say it needs to fit into the character of the neighborhood. We have to define character much more clearly with dimensional things and architectural feature requirements and so forth. We cannot just use the term in the regulations of that the apartment has to fit into the character of the community. Next possible reason I have is overcrowding. If there's an accessory apartment in many areas and neighborhoods and streets, it's not going to overcrowd things, but there are some neighborhoods like William Street, Henry Street, Joseph Street on the west side of Hollow Tree Ridge Road and north of West Avenue that were developed around the turn of the 19th to 20th century and are very tight, narrow streets. People park on the street a lot already, and if people are allowed to have accessory apartments in those neighborhoods, there'll be even more on-street parking, and people would be parking too close to intersection. We create too many safety hazards with too much overcrowding.
I have a question on overcrowding. Are we allowed to consider the impact on local schools? Because a lot of these are about parking, right? On-street parking,
okay.
parking inside of the lot size, whatever, to accommodate it. But if we allow every house in Darien to put an ADU in, there's gonna be more kids, right? Which means we have an overcrowding issue, not as it pertains to like parking on the roads, but certainly like the school systems, right? We would probably need at least to consider what the increase in population would do to like the town services, the roads, the schools in particular. But I don't see that on any of these. Can we consider that?
You can, because it's by state law that you have to provide public
Well,
education.
no
If
matter
your school's too
what they
small,
do.
build it in school.
All of these are based on public safety issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You gotta build
really,
it.
it's really a public safety issue.
So we can't consider the use of the town's stuff.
Nope. You can.
I guess we would collect taxes from these people though, theoretically,
So
of
you
course.
can build a bigger school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
That's exactly why I didn't include it, is
Yeah.
because the courts have basically said if you've got more students, you need more schools, build them.
Yeah. Same with fire, you need more
Yeah.
fire trucks, you need more police.
ambulances.
Hire.
I believe.
The good news that occurs to me is that any of these accessory apartments or what have you are not going to accommodate parents and many kids, I don't
Sure,
think.
yeah.
From what I'm envisioning, they're gonna be accessory.
Yeah, I mean, they should be one-bedroom studios.
Yeah,
stuff
tiny
like that.
stuff.
There's a limitation on size, right, in the proposed regs?
I'm sorry?
A limitation on size?
The statute
Percentages.
allows the commission, if they do adopt regulations, to put a maximum size on the units of 1,000 square feet or 30% of the existing dwelling unit, whichever is less.
Westport
You
made
need to work
theirs
out that
bigger.
formula. Right. One of the issues that's come up is people say, well, if you create small apartments, then there won't be any kids that live there. That might be true. But many of the people that live in there will be people that leave their 3 and 4 bedroom home, stay in Darien, move into And they downsized by moving into the smaller accessory apartment. And those people who did not have children in school recently, now that the new occupant of that 3 and 4 bedroom home has kids going to school. So there's a little bit of a misleading thing where people say, well, there won't be any more kids because it's an accessory apartment that's small. The secondary result is that there could be more students in school. And we actually saw that with Middlesex Commons when that occurred. And we saw it with Avalon, where many of the residents in those developments are people that move within Darien, and then their home became occupied by someone who had a family with young children at that point, which is great. I mean, that's
4 kids.
the process.
It's the country club,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The old member passes away or
Yeah, exactly. That never
moves
uses
to
the club.
rackets or, and they get replaced by a whole family.
But what he's saying is what happens, and it happens in Fairfield, and it's documented up in Westport, is someone builds an accessory dwelling unit, the landlord, so to speak, moves into the 1 bedroom and rents the house to somebody else.
Right.
So it ends up being a flip, but it's legal. Okay, keep going. We're doing good.
Number 7 is the voiding of existing regulations. We do have regulations now that allow for secondary or accessory apartments under certain limited, restricted circumstances. And that can be as part of a special permit use, like the golf courses or the swim club or the DCA house. And those were never intended to comply with Public Act 21-29 because those regulations were written long before that rule came into effect. If we don't opt out of the requirements of Public Act 21-29, then those regulations would become null and void. What do? We have to rewrite the regulations to make those compliant with the state statutes. So it would be an unintended consequence of not opting out that those existing regulations become null and void. And those existing regulations provide much needed housing that's below the normal market rate for a single family detached house in Darien.
We just saw that on Tokeneke Club's plans 2 seconds ago.
If you have an existing garage, could you use this to raise the garage height? Say you have a detached garage. Could you use these regs to make the garage bigger and put a unit above it?
Yes, the intent
And then
was
get
to
around
allow
that.
things like building, if you have a 2-car garage here, you can build
On top
a
of
unit
it,
up
put
above.
some stairs, walk up, and that would get around all the regulations that we have in place about that structure.
Well, it's funny, that's Dave's number 9 on
Yeah.
the list is, there's provision in
Non-conforming.
certain zoning districts for what Dave in the past has called like a tool shed type structure. Yeah, you can put a little tool shed close to the property line, 5 feet away, very close. Well, what if the state reg goes into effect, all of a sudden that little tool shed could become
A unit.
someone's house, coming and going, whatever, 5 feet from the property line. So one of the issues Davis said is you get these structures that are close to the property line that de facto could then become apartments very close to a property line that could have an impact. As you said, maybe a 6-foot fence blocks that little tool shed, no big deal. You go up
25
15 feet and someone's, while you're
Looking into your yard.
looking into your, so I think that is pretty much what you envision, so to speak,
That was
as one of the
points, yes,
concerns.
exactly. Now, assuming that the garage complies with the requirements, in a 1-acre zone, it's 40 feet from the front property line, 40 feet from the side property line, 25 feet from 40 feet from the front, 40 feet from the rear, and 25 feet from the side property line. And it's a 1-story garage attached to the house, or detached from the house. Then it makes sense to be able to say, okay, if we're going to allow an accessory apartment or a second dwelling unit, put a second floor on top of that garage, and that's a great place for it. Many of the housing proponents say, well, no, it's better if you just take the existing garage and convert it into housing. Well, now you've just eliminated 2 parking spaces that are required for the principal dwelling. So, yes, well, you jumped ahead of me to number 9, which was the nonconformities. Another aspect of the nonconformities is that there are a number of parcels in town that were never intended to be building lots. They were utility rights of way, they were utility substations, they were leftover pieces from subdivisions, they were strips of land that the state of Connecticut had acquired as part of a highway expansion and no longer needs. They were never approved as building lots. They're undersized for building lots. But if the state statute says you cannot require the correction of a nonconformity as a condition of making an accessory apartment, then it will be argued that these should be allowed to be accessory apartment sites, even though they're non-conforming.
Yeah.
We shouldn't get into that. We should opt out of the statute.
Yeah. And then you're gonna be in a situation where you have somebody who wants to tear down a house and build a new house on a non-conforming lot. They have to make all those new structures conforming, but the neighbor next door who wants to do an accessory dwelling can suddenly just convert his garage that's 5 feet over the setback. And so then you have this, one guy is held to a different standard immediately next to another guy, and it just creates a quagmire.
Yep, exactly. Yeah,
But
I
the
think the
utility-
intent when they wrote it was that if the existing sidewall of the house was supposed to be 15 feet from the property line and it's only 12 feet from the property line, it's non-conforming. In some communities, they require that the non-conforming wall be removed and everything be made compliant before there can be any expansion whatsoever. Darien does not do that. Darien says the existing 12-foot wall can stay as it is. It cannot be expanded upward or out, back, front. You cannot make more of that non-conforming situation. And you cannot make it closer to the property line either. But we wouldn't require, if somebody wanted to convert, wanted to add on to the other side of the house, we wouldn't require them to remove the existing non-conforming wall.
They're gonna go back, they're gonna be calling you back. They're gonna be calling you back, because the caseload is gonna go through the roof.
But a utility lot would require a principal residence along with an accessory apartment, right?
You'd think so. But the argument, I mean, in 38 years of being the zoning enforcement officer, I've heard a whole lot of arguments, some of them pretty stupid. But somebody could make the argument, well, it's non-conforming because it doesn't meet the width or the area, and it's also non-conforming because it doesn't have an existing house yet. And you won't allow an existing house yet, so it's non-conforming, and unless you opt out, the statute says you cannot require the correction of that non-conforming status of not having a dwelling there to begin with. Your thought is absolutely correct, and it would be a pretty absurd argument, but you hear a lot of absurd arguments. There were times when people came to me where they wanted to buy a piece of property from the state that was no bigger than the little podium that you're on, so that they could put a tiny house on there. It's like, the tiny house isn't gonna comply with anything, and it's not gonna stay tiny. People will always wanna expand that tiny house, and they wanna make a patio, and they wanna make a covered patio, and then they wanna make that covered patio enclosed. So, I've just heard that time and time and time again, so I tend to think as I'm drafting the regulations that I'm drafting, try to make them foolproof, in the sense that people are gonna argue about these things left and right. And Jeremy and I have talked about it many times, that we can draft a letter, and it's gonna take us an hour to draft it and write it and send it, and that's gonna be argued about with the zoning board of appeals for hours and hours on end. So.
Another quick thing, if I can, back to the garage.
You're lucky you're here.
Adding on top of the garage, can you exceed the 30-foot height limitation or whatever it is?
The existing regulations would not allow you to. The state statutes do not intend you to be able to. The Planning and Zoning Commission could write a regulation that says if you want to allow, I think it's reduced setbacks or more coverage, then you can do that for an accessory apartment under 21-29. I don't think it includes height. I'd have to double check that.
Fair enough, thanks.
I think you convinced us, but you got a couple more minutes.
Yeah. And the other item that I had is the lack of a public hearing. 21-29 does not allow the regulations to require a public hearing for a proposed accessory apartment. You could require it be by site plan, which means that the Planning and Zoning Commission as a group would act on it. You could allow it to be acted on by staff, in which case there's no commission review. It's just dealt with like a regular building permit, which does not come to the commission. But you could not be by a special permit or by a special exception, and you could not require a variance, which requires that the Zoning Board of Appeals hold a public hearing. And a lot of times, there's good information that comes from the public when they have an opportunity to say, well, you don't realize this, but there's this major drainage problem here, and every winter it's an icing problem that causes a safety issue out in the street. If the commission knows that, it's not a reason to deny the application for an accessory apartment, but the commission could say, get that corrected as part of the project. Or if there's another issue of structural stability of the building, does it comply with the building code? Those can come out at the public hearing. And so the statute, unless you opt out, the statute would not allow you to hold a public hearing for an application for an accessory apartment. So those are 9 reasons that I had listed, but the commission certainly can add to that list or subtract from this list if you wanted to. And then they can be incorporated into a draft motion for your consideration at a future meeting. And if there's other items or concerns that you think would be appropriate, let's discuss them.
Okay, so in our last general meeting, we talked about this. Is there anything that anybody remembered they spoke about then that we want to add to this list of 9? Because, I mean, you could have 2 reasons to opt out, and all we need is 2. Right now, we have 9.
Yep.
You know, so I think we're kind of covered. I don't think there's, of the 5 of us sitting here, I don't think there's any disagreement on what we
Yeah.
want to do.
And I don't think there was anything discussed that was not included on this list, because I re-went through my notes immediately prior to coming here, and I didn't recall any
Yeah, the only thing that I remember
additional
saying
reasons.
at the prior general meeting was that if a special permit comes in, we would waive like the application fee or something like that, but that's got nothing to do with opting out now. Because someone says, you know, the reason why I don't want to do it because the special permit hearing costs money and it takes time and all that other stuff, but, you know, we do this all the time.
I will note for the record, what Dave referred to is we did get one letter from the public. Obviously, no one's here in the audience right now. We emailed it to commission members about 4 o'clock today. It's an email from Rolf Oben, who you may recall came to our last hearing on the affordable housing plan.
Mhm.
You have Mr. Oben's comments with his concerns, which Dave referenced earlier. But those are the only public comments we've received on this.
Could you, I didn't, if that came today, I didn't see it, whatever time it came. Did you guys ever get this today?
He was raising the question of accessory apartments.
Basically, his question was, can you explain the difference between accessory dwelling units and accessory apartments?
Which Dave.
And Dave covered that.
Yeah, he tried to explain it to us, I kind of got lost in the weeds, but,
So,
okay, that's fine. So we answered his question.
yes, and that, I think, is the only public comment we've received on this. As of, I'll just double check here, see if anything else came in while we were meeting, but nope, that's it.
Okay. All right, so you're done with your speech, right? Anybody else have anything to add to this discussion, this hearing?
No.
Good. Anything we're missing from you two guys? Okay, I would think that we want to make a motion to approve,
You got to close the hearing
close the hearing.
and then instruct staff to draft something for the next meeting.
Okay, so that's it. Based on this, you want to, look for a motion to close the hearing. Adam makes the motion. You in the game tonight? I looked your way.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just, you're looking at me. It's all good. I'm behind your
If he
shoulder.
makes a second.
It should be noted that there is no public here to make any comments.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
right, so anyone in the public want to speak to this domain? No. we can close the public hearing. Adam made the motion, Amy makes the second, all in favor? 5-0, thank you. Public hearing is closed. So it comes up later on the agenda. I don't want to add a lot of stuff to the agenda, but deliberation and public hearing closed on the 6th. I would just say, when this comes up later, that we act on this tonight to keep the ball moving and get the momentum, because we do have a deadline for this item.
Yes.
Yes, the goal was to get to the RTM by October 1st, which would allow them to get on for their October 17th or 27th.
We said Rules Committee, October 1st.
October 1st, it goes to roll, so.
Okay. Because they only have a couple million stuff for the year. One of them is town hall, there's town speak.
On that, do we think we'll see a draft of recommended ADU regs?
We have to.
I think what we're gonna do is run that through concurrently. So while we send this to the, presumably if the commission votes tonight or next week or the week after, whatever it is, to get it to rules by October 1st.
Yep.
As Dave referenced, in the meantime, we have to come up with a provisional something, so if the RTM doesn't get the 2/3 vote. So if the vote is 58
Yep.
to 40, it doesn't pass. And then the commission really needs to have regs on their books, unless
Yep.
this would be the default.
And also just the idea of the more more information the RTM has as to the reasons why we're opting out, and hey, this is what we're thinking of. They have, the more information, the more likely they are to be comfortable with it.
And the other advantage is, if the RTM say at their meeting on October 17th, whatever it is, let's say it passes 81-0 like it did last time, we would have officially opted out. We could kind of take a breather and not have to rush it through by the end of the year.
Yep.
Which would give Dave and the commission a little more time to kick this around and
Do we
get.
only have one crack at the apple with the RTM vote, or can you propose it twice if needed? Say you said you went to the RTM and said, these are the reasons we want to opt out, and it didn't carry, because they said, you know what, it's nice you want to opt out, but we want to see what you want to replace it with. And then we had a special meeting down the road later on, before January 1, that said, okay, now these are the regs that the planning and zoning have proposed and approved. Now will you opt out? Do we have 2 bites at that apple, if needed?
I don't see why not. I don't think there's any prohibition of going back to them.
It's just the deadline that we have.
But with either more information or to get a
Yep.
clarification or
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
But
What
they're
Amy-
also members of the public, so they can comment on the regulations as we propose them.
Correct.
Right, so if
Yeah.
they're not happy with,
They could postpone the vote instead of saying no, too.
right,
Just having been the former chairperson of
Yep.
the committee that's gonna get that through, it was fairly easy to get it through, because I said, they're opting out of this because this is what they think is the best thing.
We already
for
had
their
that in
hand.
place.
And you already had that in place.
yeah.
And we don't have that in scenario.
Business on
Although the fallback is, if nothing passes through the RTM, you know what's
This.
passing, which is what you have in your
Yep.
package, which
Yeah.
is, might not be amenable to everyone.
Yep, understood. Okay.
Okay. So,
General.
this hearing's closed, we can move on to the next agenda item,
Correct.
and pick this up later, okay? Keep moving on? All right, that's the end of the public hearing, for tonight. Now we're gonna go back into the general meeting, which we started already. Next item on the agenda is discussion and possible adoption of the following. The Town of Darien Affordable Housing Plan prepared pursuant to, what's the G, man? Connecticut General Statute 8-30J. Sorry about that, I knew you knew that. I don't know. The entire final draft plan dated June 2022 has been filed with the Darien Town Clerk's Office and is available for review in the Darien Planning and Zoning Department at 2 Rancho Road during regular office hours of 8 a.m. to 5:15 p.m. Monday through Thursday. The draft plan has also been posted to the town website at www.darienct.gov/AH-plan. The public hearing closed on July 26th, 2022. So at our last meeting, or one of our last meetings, we got a copy of the Darien Affordable Housing Plan. Dave presented it, I think with Jeremy and Fred's help. We went over it, kind of sort of chapter by chapter. we've been working on this plan for over a year now, I want to say.
Yes.
We saw it in various chapters at various points in time. We had public comment, we got some letters in the mail for public comment or emails, and some, the Ralph gentleman did speak.
Ralph Goldman,
Did speak.
Monica McNally, Yvonne Klein, you recall?
And Jamie Stevenson.
Jamie Stevenson, yes.
So, we didn't vote on it last time, because I wanted everyone to digest it and think about it, and look at it one more time if there are any typos, corrections, scrivener's errors, anything like that. So, tonight, we can vote at it as is, make edits on the fly, whatever we want to do. So,
George did submit comments. He had a
George
couple
Riley?
good, George Riley sitting right next to you.
You do know?
yes, I
Oh, okay.
didn't know you made comments, but I
Oh,
didn't.
you didn't get my
Couple
email?
of them.
That's
No, I
my
did
point.
No, I did not.
So what
You
I'll
didn't
do
get
is,
my email?
Steve, this is your copy here.
Okay.
So they were all, Fred and I read it over. Those are really well thought out, logical extensions of, and I think you even, in a couple places, that it should go right here. to
I
read.
did try to be specific.
Which is
just
good.
To help out as much as I could. But I'm disappointed the chair hasn't seen it, because I certainly would have liked him to have an opportunity to think about it. But,
Yeah, I was checked out by Friday at 10 o'clock, I can tell you that.
10 a.m., okay, good for you.
No, I was working. I was working, but I didn't have one thing. I was thinking of my office too.
It's 5 p.m.
No, I did
somewhere.
not see it. That's all, I can read it real quick. Well, why don't we go over
All
six
right.
bullet part, chapter 1? which is
Yeah, all right,
Town
so the bullet point on number 6 is about continuing to maintain the character of Darien as a residential community, which is primarily comprised of lower density, single-family neighborhoods. I am concerned about saying that we are a residential community per se, and therefore I propose some language that would say, while Darien remains a predominantly residential community, it has developed extensive commercial and business districts along the Post Road and in Norotan Heights along West Avenue, which are close to public transit. Those predominantly commercial and business areas provide extensive opportunities for increased affordable housing to foster residential communities. I just think, as I think about Darien, and like Mr. Netter, I am a lifelong Darienite, so I know that it is not the residential community it was in the 1950s. And I think we need to come to grips with that. I mean, anybody getting off of the highway at I-95 does not think of this as a residential community, which is fine. I mean, I'm not knocking it. I love this town, obviously, and there are terrific residential communities, but I think we should note that there is a blend, and that blend is providing opportunities for more affordable housing. So that is kind of what was behind my thinking there, and I did go on to say that I think the commission should favor reference to residential communities, which I understand is becoming something of a term of art rather than residential character. There's a lot of criticism of the affordable housing advocates and all that about our defending our town because of its residential character. And so we probably ought to be a little more open-minded about that and indicate, yes, we've got residential communities, we also have communities of businesses and other things. I really want to suggest we plug that in here somewhere in the plan, and also have it in our mind. I'm going to have it in my mind as we consider new regulations and other references to the town and a descriptor for the town, and try not to refer always to the residential character of the town.
Yep, that's a good catch.
That's, I'll leave it at, I've got another point, but I'll leave it at that one as my introductory thought.
Me personally, I think your change to bullet point number 6, I think it's great.
Good, thank you.
Because it's, I mean, you can go back, I don't know when Darien started, but all those houses on Post Road from, I want to say from Trader Joe's to the Norwalk Town Line were houses.
Yeah.
And now most of those are, offices.
Yeah.
Or there's a business in there someplace. Maybe they're switching back to houses, but, and the same with the other end of town, there were houses, so. I mean, we've been on this commission, all of us been on this commission for a long time. We spend 90% of our stuff talking about commercial.
Yeah.
We probably talked 30% on residential, but it's still a lot. So Darien's a great business community too. So I don't have a huge problem with that one. Anybody else want to chime in? George wrote it, so I think he's
No.
Yeah, no,
I agree.
no pride of authorship, but,
okay.
Yep.
all right.
Next comment.
So my next comment, I think I have, well, anyway, let me go to the next comment that I raised in this memo. At chapter 6, my suggestion was an introductory statement, well, that's you.
Thank you.
B, that the Planning and Zoning Commission will review in September each year its activities in furtherance of these strategies and actions for implementation, with a goal of substantial action occurring on or before September 2027, a 5-year time frame, and ought to have some annual incentive really to have addressed it during the course of the year and doing what we can to take some action in that regard. I think this is really a terrific plan, but I think it needs a bit of a boost to be sure we actually do something with this plan. That's where I was coming from.
The only thing I would add to that is when we did the town plan of conservation development, the very last section, we had an action plan. That was something Susan Cameron added in the end. And that was, implementation.
Right, and for us, chapter 6 here is entitled Strategies and Actions for Implementation.
Yeah.
So I think, as George mentioned it, you say, you know what, somewhere in chapter 6 is probably the logical spot for it. As you talk about the other chapters, it wouldn't make sense. So the logical spot for that sentence or paragraph would be either the first paragraph in chapter 6, or maybe even the last paragraph of chapter 6.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent as to that. My simple suggestion was the introductory paragraph. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I would say right after where it says, this chapter focuses on strategies relative to affordable housing, the first paragraph could be implementation, and then take George's paragraph, boom, right, first paragraph, make it the first paragraph of number 6.
Yeah, I don't have a huge problem with that either. Because, relative to the town plan of conservation amendment, I remember when we did that at the end, we said, okay, we're gonna do sign changes, we're gonna do the zoning board of appeals stuff, we're gonna do this, and, since we did that, we've checked off half those things inside that document, and it's 5 years later.
One of Yvonne Klein's comments was that if this is a 5-year plan, there should be a very detailed timeline, a very detailed schedule of who is gonna do what and when are they going to do it. I had deliberately not included that in the original draft.
Is this a 5-year plan? Because the last time it was done was like 12 years ago.
Well, the state statute now requires that every 5 years, the commission needs to
Okay,
update the affordable housing.
okay.
Right. Now, what's
Well,
interesting
the
is,
town needs to.
right, the town plan was last done in 2016, and the state requires you to do it every 10 years.
Right.
So in 2026, the town's gonna have to do a whole town plan update, which de facto will have a housing chapter, which may end up being your new housing plan in 2026, which is four and a half years from now. Because it wouldn't make sense to do a whole new town plan and then scramble 6 months later to do a whole new affordable housing plan.
Right.
So it's likely as, in 4 years from now, as we start working on it in 2.5, 3 years from now, it's probably gonna be the merging of both.
That's what I was thinking. Do you want to time it to be the same?
So it's likely that in the future, the 10th year would be the housing plan would be part of the town plan, and then in the 5th year would be something like this.
Okay. Because the town
makes
plan of
sense.
conservation
Yeah,
development,
you get the schedules lined up, so
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
doing 5 and 10, 5 and 10.
because not every single town has to have their housing plan done at the same exact year. So this is
Which of course
2022.
makes no sense, but that's a different story.
But the town plan of conservation development, it's rolling.
Right.
We're
So-
not the same exact year as Greenwich or the same exact year as,
Right. So-
Brooklyn.
Some towns use their town plan, housing plan, and had theirs done very early. They said, oh, we just finished our town plan a few months ago, here's our housing plan.
Yeah, pull it out or something like
Right.
that. I go. All right, so what's your suggestion? What do you
First
add?
paragraph of chapter 6.
That I like. That I think it's fine.
But you don't want a detailed month to month, who's gonna do what in what month to implement this 5-year
We
plan.
don't do that for anybody. We don't do that for anything.
That's fine.
Though I do think it's logical, there's many initiatives here or strategies that during that annual review process, we have a report out on, how is the financing of fundable affordable housing coming along? What changes have you made to modifying the zoning map? What changes have you made to your accessory dwelling, apartment regs, et cetera? So there could be, and there's not like 100 of them, but we could have an update on where the progress is on each one of these main tenants.
The only thing I can say is some of those are out of our control.
I
I
understand.
mean, like number 6, the housing, work with the Board of Selectmen. If they don't want to pick it up, we
I
can't force them
understand.
to.
But that's why I don't think you can put it to a specific
Me too.
timeline, because then
Yeah.
you're gonna be in violation of this in the first month.
Correct, me too.
Yeah.
And
But
then someone's
you-
gonna throw that in their
but-
face and say, oh.
You were
can't
supposed to
follow
do
your
that.
But
rules."
I also don't think there's anything wrong with us as a body
Correct.
re-examining
Yeah.
every year. How are we doing?
We could have a report or
on these-
something
on these
once a
points.
year. What's the up status?
Yeah,
It
that's
doesn't have
what
to be-
George has done.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I
But it
think it's a
doesn't
good
need to be a
idea.
formal requirement.
Yeah.
Good, okay.
So we're gonna do it to
I
put
just worry
in
about
his
this
first
stuff.
sentence?
Sounds good to
All
me.
I'm here for.
Because it's like, it's this month, we come back from vacation, okay, what do we do this year? And we can figure it out during the month of August.
Yeah.
Okay?
Good.
Something else from August, your August is gonna stink next year.
That's okay. We keep track of this stuff. It's what we do.
I know you
It's a
do.
living.
You didn't keep track
It's a
of it.
living.
She does.
At the risk of taking another minute, I'm afraid I thought of another item that I wanted to address. And that was on in chapter 3, page 4 of the 5. The paragraph starts, there are 2,190 or 31.7% cost burden households in Darien. As you know, I think we all talked about this and we're a little skeptical. So I thought maybe we ought to start that paragraph with, according to Westcog's recent study, the accuracy of which is not clear, blah, blah, blah.
Those words you want in there?
I don't know if we could say
accuracy.
accuracy. We could just say according to their study.
Yeah.
Because we reference Westcog everywhere, which basically makes
Yeah.
all of our tables
Yeah,
Useless.
totally just whatever you want.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we said we are gonna do that from the get-go.
okay.
Everyone was doing that. That was the whole plan, where Westcott did theirs first.
And I think that's a good point, George. That also came up during the public hearing, I think from at least one person, maybe two, who said, I don't know about this chart.
Yeah.
Right,
So I think
Okay,
your
whatever you want.
disclaimer's a good one.
good, okay. Enough from me, thank you.
No, it's fine. It's supposed to be a comprehensive document. Okay. So that's, George, we're saying yes to the first one on there and yes to the last one that are in quotes, right? Both items that are in quotes. Okay, Amy, you have anything special to add on this one?
No, other than just 2 questions. The town council is gonna make sure that the zoning, all portions of the zoning regulations are in compliance with the applicable provisions of the Federal Fair Housing Act.
What page are you on?
This is page, the last page of chapter 5, other possible changes to zoning regs. Does that happen as a matter of course, or is that something that specifically we need to call out?
Well, I think what we usually do is when we put together zoning regulation amendments, whether it's me, Dave, through the years, whatever,
Yep.
would you say almost always or
Almost
always run
always.
the by town
Yeah,
council?
right?
I think it's always.
Yeah, okay.
What you'll find is something like a zoning regulation amendment will pass by, that's initiated by the commission, will run it by town council. A controversial resolution or something like, oh boy,
Yeah.
run it by town council. So it's, in essence, we would be
Okay.
doing that.
We're
And
doing
they-
that anyway.
They look at it from a different angle than
Yep.
oftentimes we do. Or sometimes we say, we think this is a concern, and then so.
And then just for my own edification, with regards to trying to accomplish a moratorium that says you need to increase your affordable percentage by two percentage points, is that from the last application?
It's they base it on the number of housing units as of the most recent census. So right now,
But the need will change.
the needle will change when the 2020 census comes out. very shortly. So
Mhm.
right now, we're working off the 2010 census, which
Okay.
says we need 141 points or something like that,
Okay.
which is what, so we've needed that amount for 10 years, basically. But as you said, the bar is about to move up. We're not sure how far, but it's about to move up. So
Okay.
we will find out shortly what that number is, which will trigger the number of moratorium points for our next moratorium.
Because we don't know that answer now.
Okay.
Because
We do not know the
we're
number.
waiting for the goalposts to move.
Yes, sadly.
Okay.
Sir. One trivial point. I couldn't find anywhere where we said what RTM means. Like, we all know what it means in here, but every other acronym that we reference in this document, like, even if it's like a special overlay zone or a special business zone, you say it once, and then then you have like, SB in parentheses, and we use it everywhere else. But I could only find 2 references of RTM, which is just before the page on chapter 6, and then in the 3rd page of chapter 6 towards the bottom of financing funding. Those are the only 2 references. I couldn't find, and I didn't have the Word document. I was just trying to read this afternoon on the train, and I couldn't find anywhere where it said, representative town meeting, RTM,
Good.
and then put it somewhere. So I don't know if
Let's
we
put
just
it at the
want
end of chapter 5.
to do that somewhere. This
Yeah,
way,
we'll do a
just
global search, and the first time we see it,
put it
boom.
there. Yeah.
So it's like control find or whatever you do.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I just was working
Beautiful.
off the
Good
physical
catch.
copy. It's actually twice on that page. Now I didn't even notice the second one. But yeah. But other than that, no comments from me. It looks good. And I like George's comments as well.
Okay. Mike, anything?
I just have 2 nits.
Yeah.
Chapter 2, the first paragraph, it says the new few pages instead of the next few pages of the
Excellent.
last sentence.
Look at that. Contract lawyer.
Blind myself reading things every day.
That's why I like talking.
And then page 4 of 6 in inclusionary zoning, what is that? Chapter 4,
Yep.
bottom of the page, that whole sentence doesn't make any sense. In Darien, that has specifically created. Or it didn't make sense to me.
In Darien, that has specific create the following units shown in the chart below.
So I think it should be, Darien has specifically created the following units shown in the chart below.
That would be good, because it's a little more precise and concise.
That's
So you
words,
say,
man.
instead of in Darien,
Right, just Darien.
Darien.
Darien has specifically, sorry.
Yeah.
That's it, that's all I have.
Instead of saying chart below, you could say exhibit 4.2 just because it's page continuation.
Yep.
It's usually how.
Would you do that?
If it's on a different page, you would reference it.
That. That.
Oh, we got-
George another one.
I've already, I gave it to.
Where's that?
Nothing.
Yep, okay.
George already had his 3 wishes.
You gave it to Tread?
George had his 3 wishes.
Oh, you got it, Fred?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Got it?
Excellent. Thank you all.
I'm good with it. Can we vote on this tonight?
Sure.
Just for your edification, we get letters and emails from reporters that saying, you're one of the towns that is not done your Darien plan, and Jeremy goes, no, we did it in draft, 2 months ago, and we're gonna vote on it tomorrow night.
And we had a hearing.
We had a hearing.
Not every community had a hearing. We had a hearing.
Oh, did I ever answer that question?
No, that was the one, the gentleman who emailed.
I know, but
Friday.
I answered, because I wanted to add something on top of yours, that we invited all of our Hartford delegation to it.
Oh, you didn't answer.
I never sent that email that I wrote in my head. Interesting.
One day you'll be able to write emails in your head and they'll get sent.
Trust me. Okay, so we're making changes to this, most of the minor edits. Anything else? Okay.
Nope.
Good.
Want someone make a motion to approve the draft affordable housing plan as edited?
I'll make the motion.
Amy makes a motion, looking for a second. George makes a second. All those in favor?
Thank you all.
Bonnie even voted.
We will send this out
I
to
got
the
2
state and package it up tomorrow.
Fantastic. All right.
Excellent.
This meeting is getting super long. It's now 10 o'clock and we got a lot of wood to chop still, I think.
All right.
Where are we next? Deliberation and possible decision on the following. Proposed amendments to the Darien zoning regulations, COZR number 4-2023. Amendment to the special permit application number 188F as in Frank, Darien Board of Education, 2 and 80 High School Lane. I'm just gonna read the whole thing. Proposal to amend the Darien zoning regulations to permit the lighting and public address facilities at the
Thank you,
stadium field on the town of Darien, on the Darien High School property to be utilized for nonprofit educational and community purposes inclusive of, but not limited to, athletic activities. Proposal to amend the applicant's previous special permit to expand the hours and number of days that the lighting and public address facilities may be utilized, and to expand the permissible uses of facilities from limited athletic use to include community-wide events and activities, including those of groups and organizations unaffiliated with the town or school district. The hearing closed on July 12th, 2022. So in our packets, we got a draft resolution that Fred went over time and time again, I think, because we didn't really rush this at all. Did you happen to send this to town council at all?
We did. We
Yes.
spoke to town council today, who had a couple things to point out.
Okay,
It's ultimately, of course, up to the commission.
let's hear them, let's hear those
Okay.
items first.
So
As Jeremy just stated, so everyone knows, we said, do we ever send these things to town council? This is one of the ones where I looked at it and said, send this to town council. So that's what these guys did.
So one of the issues that we talked a lot about with town council is finding number 12. It talks about the state statutes regarding noise and how certain noise is exempt. And we talked a lot about that as it relates to the commission's conditions of approval in paragraphs E and G, and those were the basic two, and somewhat condition J. So what we talked about, and I'll kick this first item off for the commission, is at the public hearing, there was much of the comments received was actually about the public address rather than the lights. Because although most people could see the lights in the distance, the noise was much more noticeable. So in condition E, the commission, one of the proposed conditions of approval is how the public address system may be used. And the commission's condition is the PA system may be used at night for high school, junior varsity, and varsity games only. And the use shall be consistent with the hours permitted for the lights. The PA system may also be used for neutral site playoff games that don't involve Darien High School, and the PA system may not be used for practices. But there was no, you may recall that one of the neighbors' comments was relative to the nature and sound of pregame, right? The PA system when teams are warming up or practicing. So we talked a lot about, should the commission set a limit on how much before a game and after a game you could use the PA system? Because the presumption is after the game, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Good night, everyone, go home safely, whatever. It doesn't, you can imagine if as people were filing out, they started playing loud music or something. And before the game, how much before the game should the commission allow, I'll call it the pregame music? That was something, because one could argue that that's not crowd noise, and applause or booing or whatever it is. That is just frankly amplified music. So that's one thing we discussed that I wanted to bring to your attention is should that be tweaked in any way?
The questions I have, are we splitting the baby between sound system and lights, or are they attached?
Well, I think we are splitting it because you can use the lights without the sound system, and there's less restriction.
And vice versa. You can use the sound system at 12 noon game, on
Right, Saturday during the day, a daytime game, you wouldn't be using the lights, you're correct.
Right.
Thanksgiving game, the lights might not be on, but the PA system might be on.
Well, even.
The PA system is
even
also restricted to high school sport use.
Only.
Right.
Right, so any youth sports or
TGFL,
outside
no.
rentals.
They're never using it.
Right.
DGFO's never
Outside
using it.
rentals, no. So it's very clear from the commission's, this condition, it says, maybe we take out the word at night, because it says here the public address system may be used at night, and maybe we take that out, because as we've acknowledged, there's lots of Saturday afternoon games and Thanksgiving game that you'd want to use the PA system.
Right, but there's a 4 o'clock game on May 17th,
Right.
for the girls soccer team, or whatever it is.
So yes, we should
That's
take-
got nothing to do with this application at all. So now you're creating something that we're not even
Right,
talking about.
right.
It's
So-
not even part of this application.
arguably.
This application is only changing a couple items relative to the lights, right? So if you're gonna regulate May 17th at a 3 o'clock soccer game or lacrosse
Or
game.
let's take today as an example.
got nothing
It was
to do
very
with it.
dark at 3 PM, right? So I would assume the only way you could have practiced outside today, no matter what sport it was, is with the lights on, would be my guess.
Agreed. But the gentleman that did speak in the corner, he said, there was something going on, that could have been May 17th.
Yep, true.
It's got nothing to do with October or November 1st.
Right.
That's the finest idea. But that's got nothing to do with this application.
Right.
That's not what they're asking to change that.
What's the time limit on the town's noise ordinance? 10 o'clock?
Well, there's a town noise ordinance,
But
and then
this
there's
is
the
exempt,
state noise ordinance. The town noise ordinance, I don't recall if it's 10 o'clock off the top of my head, I don't know. But,
In
I don't
practice,
think
it's
it's
10.
specific
Yeah.
to that.
yeah.
In practice,
I
it's
looked
a
at
week.
it in the charter, in the ordinances, I don't think it was specific to that.
Are we just keeping them together because the
It just-
original application kept them together?
I think we're keeping them together because there was so much public comment about the issue is not so much the lights, it is the sound, and that they were encouraging us to make some provisions. I think that's why it landed in here, is because there was so much
Right, and there were,
commentary
What
on
did
it.
town council say about it?
they said this is fine, this paragraph's fine. If the commission wanted to put parameters on it, that would be the paragraph to do it, which is how much before a game, if you're gonna argue that using the PA system during a high school football game or lacrosse game or whatever would be exempt from the noise ordinance, it's kind of part and parcel, is how much before the game, which again, we got a lot of comment at the public hearing, or after the game, does the commission want to get into restricting that? Or say if you have a 7 o'clock game, yeah, people can start prepping at 3 PM and start turning on the music when the lights come on as teams
But see,
arrive.
you're tying it to the lights. I mean, the lacrosse team, girls and boys, they start practice at
3 in the afternoon?
3 in the afternoon.
Right, the lights are
Yeah,
not
The
on.
But-
lights they're never gonna even be used.
Right. Now, if they have a game at 3 in the afternoon and the lights are not on, like they might have been this past Thursday or something, you play with the PA system.
Really, whatever you want.
Currently, condition E reads, as Jeremy mentioned, the use shall be consistent with the hours permitted for use of the lights, right?
So
So
cut
if there's
together.
gonna be a high school game at 7 o'clock, and they turn on the lights at, let's say, 5:30 in October or November, when it gets dark early, presumably, the way this is written now, you can start using the PA system at 5 o'clock, 2 hours
That's
before
what's
the start of the
currently,
game.
that's what's currently.
Right.
But that doesn't solve the gentleman in the corner's problem.
So I don't think before the game is really the issue, it's after the game, and I would suggest the PA should end with the game. Announce this final score, and that would be it, because it may be 10 o'clock or whatever it is. And we're really talking about, I think, as to G, the only time for testing would be activities after 7 PM. We're really not looking at the 3 o'clock noise levels or.
Does the 3 o'clock lights, the 3 o'clock game in the springtime where there's no lights but they want to use the PA system, right? Is that covered under Rule F? Because then, since it's not at night and it's not in with the lights, then aren't we then going to be covered by just general statute 22A69? And that's how you sort of haphazardly say, if you're not using the lights, but you want to use the PA system for a game, then it's got to abide by that.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
We can make it more clear, but that's kind of how I thought that
Right.
was.
Keep in mind, the paragraph in the middle here, which as you see in strikeout is paragraph Q, says, which is what's in effect today. Appendix D of the applicant's proposed conditions, so back in 2017, the applicant put forth, we can live with these conditions, which are the PA system will be permitted use only during GHS games on the stadium field. And you can read through what the existing proposals are, not during practices or scrimmage.
Yeah.
Music is only allowable prior to DHS games. Music's not allowable during practices. Again, that's what
they have right now.
Previous
that's what
one.
they
Yeah,
have, they put forth in 2017, and they were, in essence, content to live with,
Yep.
and had been living with.
Just so whenever used for practice, whenever only, is allowed only prior to DHS games, which it is, but now we're putting a time factor on it.
Should we just strike shall be consistent with the hours permitted for the use of the lights in column E? This way we cut them totally and we say the PA system is only for games up until 9 p.m., 10 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays, blah, blah, blah. The PA system may not be used for practices or any other purpose. And this way you've untied it from the lights.
But that's not what the application's about.
Not both of them now.
No, I hear you.
Well,
Yeah, I don't think being consistent adds anything. Being consistent with the lights doesn't, I don't think we need that.
Yeah.
What does that do for us?
I just don't want to change what happens in the spring if it's not part of the application. We're going above and beyond what they're asking for. You just opened the whole Pandora's box.
How?
It's because the whole application's about the expanded use of the lights.
No, it's also about the PA system.
But it's also not, yeah. It's about
Right, when the PA systems, but if they're not changing, if they're only changing the certain things. If we don't do anything, if this dies today, we don't do anything.
Right, it goes
they
back
can-
to what's in strikeout.
Correct.
We
They
can
can still
uns-
use it, they can still use the PA system at 3 o'clock on May 17th.
Yeah, so if we strike
Only
out
if
in
it's a
section
varsity or JV game.
Yeah, so if we
Correct.
strike out
Yeah,
in
so I
section
think-
E, we just get rid of consistent with the hours permitted for the use of the lights, then we just basically are saying the PA system can only be used for games, regardless of when those games take place, if there are lights, if there are no lights.
Yeah.
Which is more or less what is already said in section I, that's stricken out right above
Yeah.
it, right?
I think you're right, I think you make the attempt of saying the public address system may be used for high school and, junior varsity games only, and shall not exceed the time limitations
9
as
p.m.
designated per the light. So we're not saying you can't use it at 3 o'clock, we're just saying you have a
You have a
curfew
deadline,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, quite honestly, they're not gonna be using the PA system after 9 or 10 o'clock anyway, so I don't have a problem with putting in the end time on a curfew,
Agreed.
yeah.
Do we need to, I know we talked about this in the public hearing, if the games go past 10, they just call them, and that's it? It's like,
I think
I get it what they were saying, but I'm like, in reality, it's a tied game, it's
Yeah.
going to make the playoffs, and it's 9:50, you're just gonna say, sorry, guys, it's a tie, we'll pick it up tomorrow? They'll keep playing, they'll keep going past 10, right? They're not gonna play till 2 in the morning, but they'll go to 10:30, 10:45 if they have to, and the PA system will probably stay on that long.
I think the only thing that's outside of that is playoffs. Because you can suspend a regular season game.
Yeah, but but in practice, will they? I feel like they would never do
High
that.
school game, they're gonna start at 7 o'clock, right? Can they go 3 hours?
Yeah, the odds of that happening are
It's
pretty
low.
slim. I think it's one of those,
Yeah.
But what Manfredoni, when that came up, Manfredoni did say that if he knows the game has to end at
He
10,
would cut it.
he's gonna start the game at 5.
Hmm.
The only caveat to that is, and I keep just picking schools,
Yeah.
like Trumbull. Trumbull school ends at 2:30, it could take an hour and a half to get from Trumbull down here, from St. Joe's. You
Yeah.
know, but do the kids get out of school at 2 o'clock and get on the road before traffic?
That's what we used to do in high school.
That's what I thought too.
Get out early.
Yeah.
Those are the best games.
Well, the football dudes.
Going up to Richfield was like, you got out of school like noon. And I grew up in Fairfield. It's not like it was far, but.
Hopefully it was a science class
There-
in the
Now,
afternoon.
I think they did talk about extenuating circumstances.
Which was for
like
playoff games.
like soccer championship, triple overtime, you go to a shootout or whatever, or someone gets seriously injured and you're stopping
Get
the
an
game for a half
ambulance.
hour.
Whether it's a rain delay
Rain
or
delay,
lightning delay.
lightning or
We had all
whatever.
kinds of lightning delays
Right.
during the cross season this year.
So
Reasonableness is always.
I guess that's the question, George.
Reasonable,
Do we
yes,
put in
good word.
extenuated circumstances or just leave it with the understanding that, yeah, there could be circumstances that go
Yeah,
past
I
10?
don't think I'd open that door. I think I'd leave it
All right,
as
just
is.
leave it at 10.
Okay.
Just assume.
Uh, the-
But I do think you have to take the playoffs outside of it though.
So what are we proposing for E?
It's in there already. The
Not
PA
very-
system may also be used for FCIAC or SEAC playoff games hosted by Darien School that do not involve.
Right.
Yeah.
Playoff
So
may
we're
not, so
striking
it's in there
these-
for those guys.
We're striking the use shall be consistent with hours permitted for the use of the lights.
I think we're just saying the
Where's that?
public address system may be used, strike at night. So it may be used for high school varsity games only, and the use shall not exceed,
Not later than
not later than, no later than,
9 or 10 minutes.
than
This is you, this is you
deadlines
drafting
permitted
this,
for the
right?
use of
Fred?
lights.
Yes.
Say it again?
This is you drafting this,
What's in
right?
bold is,
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
So public address system may be used for high school, junior, and junior varsity and varsity games. So we're at nights coming out.
Yep.
That makes sense?
Yep.
correct.
Yep.
Only,
And
then
you
the,
shall, not, will not be later than, times permitted, under the under the lights. Till 9 PM, weekdays, 10 PM, Friday, Saturdays.
which is, if you think about it, you could turn on the lights at 4, you can turn on the lights on May 17th at 3 o'clock.
If needed, yeah.
There's no reason why you can't. They don't do anything, but they're still on.
Yep.
Mhm.
So if you want to use the sound system, turn the lights on.
And
Well,
I
if
don't
there's a
think
game
that's
going,
the
because it can only be
intent.
used for a game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, there's
Yeah.
a game going on.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like they're just, yeah.
So do you want to put the provision that we're talking about, like 2 hours before the game starts? Is that what we're saying or no?
I don't think we need to do that, right?
No.
We don't need to
Okay.
nitpick on that, do we? I don't,
No.
Okay.
Why would they start 2 hours before?
yeah.
Whenever they start, it should be fine.
Okay, that's fine.
The issue is.
I get the
nighttime.
neighbors' concerns about like not having the music playing at dinner time, but you do live right next to the high school. Like I'm way more worried about it at when your kids are trying to go to bed
Yeah.
at 9 o'clock at night versus unfortunately your dinner is interrupted by the PA system.
Yeah.
When you know that you're living right next to the school.
Great.
So like the 3 o'clock or the pregame, I think is less important than the later at night.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
Yeah, so I think we covered late at night, so I don't see why we would get nitpick onto when it can start.
Okay, that's fine.
So are you
What else?
Are you taking out the inconsistent with the use of the lights language?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's that?
Striking
We're
that
gonna
whole
reference a
sentence.
deadline, so it won't exceed
Yeah,
the
so
Not
PA,
later
the 9 or
than,
10.
right.
deadline.
And then get rid of this at
We're
night
gonna
too.
add
Yeah.
not later
Talk about this 'cause I
than,
can't even vote on
during
it.
weekends, and we are striking the use of.
All
the-
comments are appreciated.
I wasn't here for any of this.
You getting all
We
this?
got it, yep.
Okay.
We heard
What else did
20
town
page,
council talk
Okay,
about?
we
public comment
wanted,
that took an hour.
just to talk about condition D a little bit. Condition D, the commission hereby limits the number of events under the lights to a total of 50 per calendar year. Planning and zoning hereby allows the Board of Ed and high school athletic director the ability to manage the schedule of light use within the specific parameters defined herein. One question is the number, when we talked about during deliberations, the number of events, does that include practices?
They can't use them for practices.
No,
No.
doesn't include practice.
Does not include
No,
practice?
it does not.
Okay.
No lights and no PA, right?
Because I asked that specific question of Mayor Petronia.
Right, under lights to a total of 50, right, okay.
So, events,
Because we want to put a cap on it.
not including practices.
You're right.
Correct.
So practice, if they want to,
Yeah, some practices can have lights, right?
yeah, you
They're
start at
practicing
3:30, 4
7.
o'clock,
Yeah.
you turn the lights on,
Yeah.
you're done with practice 2 hours
That was
later.
one of the main
Another
points
team
of
comes
this.
on, uses the lights, and the third team comes on, uses the lights, shut them off at
Okay.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't
So-
go toward the 50.
And the PA is
Parentheses,
not
not
in-
including
yeah.
practices.
And the PA is not in use during.
Right, exactly.
Can't be in
During
practice, so
So
it's
it'd
already
be
covered.
3 o'clock, they flick the switch, a different team comes on every hour and a half, 2 hours, lights go off.
Good, which is not an event. An event
It's-
is fireworks, a
Game,
game.
whatever, so not including practices.
Yeah.
So 50 events, lacrosse, field hockey, football, cricket, baseball, whatever.
They're gonna figure out when they're gonna do it.
Okay,
And the
good.
PA system would only be in use for a portion of those 50 events, right? So
It's only for, yeah.
Only
yeah,
for
the
games.
anything outside the high school sporting activities,
No, PA's already gone.
PA's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
It's just lights.
you
Yeah.
They won't have a
say-
speaker
Right,
You
which
know.
is,
without a PA
you
system.
kept using like Johnny's birthday party.
Johnny's birthday party. Battle of Bands. No, you
Right.
can't use the PA
Can't
system.
use PA system.
Right, where they don't need it anyway. 'Cause- Right, and there was something else we threw inside there.
Okay. The last question we had, I think, goes to paragraph G. We talked to town council, and I know Fred spoke to George about it. In this case, the commission's requiring that the Board of Ed monitor decibel levels for night games and other activities after 7 PM, both during the week and on weekends. 5 events over a maximum of 6 months shall be coordinated. So in other words, whenever they get this decision in September, over the next 6 months, the Board of Ed will have to arrange for certain events at nights, weekdays, weekends, to noise testing. They will give the results to staff, we will pass them along to the commission, and we will put them in the file.
So what are we gonna do with this information?
There you go. There's the pregnant question, right?
Right.
So, as Jeremy said, Fred and I were talking about it, so it prompted me to consider that maybe the final sentence concludes with something like, all right, so it's, shall be coordinated with the planning and zoning office with a view toward limiting noise in excess of residential zone levels of 45 decibels at night pursuant to the regulations, which are 22A-69-3.5, which I find are, 45 is the at-night residential level. This, I hope, indicates we understand it will exceed that, but the idea is to keep it as close to that as possible, so I thought maybe that's kind of a standard to use in discussion with us and Board of Ed, but we don't really have any other leverage.
Yeah, we have no fine provision, you can't fine them.
Right.
And then specifically excluded under the state statute is the
Crowd noise.
crowd noise for a sporting event.
Right. So depending, as George acknowledged, the events they choose could be a wide range of, it
Yep.
could be Thanksgiving against New Canaan, or Friday night against Ridgefield, where 1,000 people show up and are all applauding all at once,
Yeah,
or cheering
yeah.
all at once, or the fire engine's there, the siren's going off. Any of that can happen. Or it might be a girls' field hockey on a Tuesday night, on a bitter cold night when it's snowing, and there's 15 parents there huddled under blankets. Right. So you'd get the wide range
Well,
of,
they could pick one of those nights, like, hey, we had to get,
Right.
we got
Decibels
decibel
are
level
zero.
6.
That's why we added shall be coordinated with the planning and zoning office, so we have some control over what actually gets
Yeah,
Yeah,
monitored.
yeah.
So don't
Do
take
we
part in
say-
puck games.
If you
Right.
set a standard, then
Where-
you're.
Where,
Hold on, one
doesn't
thing at a
it,
time.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, doesn't it matter where you measure this to? Where are they measuring it? Are they measuring it at the field? Are they measuring it 100 yards away from the school? Are they measuring it at the nearest house?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, presumably it would be the property line.
Right.
Yeah,
should
I
we
would think
say
so.
that? Darien High School, okay, they're gonna go on the other side of the thing, and then they're gonna put it on the property line, and then they're gonna measure it, and they'd be like, look, it's nice and quiet over here, school blocks all the noise.
Middlesex Road.
and it could be we choose a property line closest to Linda Lane or Middlesex Road, or maybe even Holly Lane to the south, or to the, to the west, closer to, east or west. So I think that would have to be, and maybe we say, shall be coordinated both in timing and locations with the planning and zoning office.
Yeah.
So we get consistency. It would be awkward to choose different locations for different readings.
Yeah.
But again, you might get wildly different events.
But now, I keep going back to graduation. Graduation can be a loud event,
But it's
right?
in the afternoon typically,
5 o'clock, it's after the sun sets.
in June.
Did town
Yeah.
council think
No,
that
no,
if
sun's still out.
if
Sun's
we
still out.
measure,
Because it's hot as blazes, that's
Well,
just
that's-
sitting there.
What's the two?
I know, it's hot as blazes.
That's not our problem.
did town council
I mean,
think
you
that
wanna
if
move
we
it till later?
measured,
Other than lights.
if we
Sorry.
measured this, that we then are liable for doing something with it?
Well, I think they thought it was, I guess the word is awkward,
Yeah.
to get the information, have the Board of Ed go out,
Here it is.
coordinate these measurements, locations, which games, and we get the reports. And the reports might come back at 52, 71,
yep, yep.
33. Those recordings go into the file, the commission gets a copy.
You do nothing with it.
Right.
But
Right.
they
What do we-
can't
what do
violate
we
the
do
state
then,
statute
right?
though, right? That's illegal for them. They
The
have to fix
State
that.
statute doesn't apply to recreational.
If
activity.
state
No.
statute doesn't apply to sporting events.
That's, I mean, we went over this years
Yeah.
ago when we're like, crowd noise, and people come in from Trumbull and make a ton of noise because their team's killing us, what do you tell them they're in violation?
Right, and so that
How do
was,
you enforce
I guess, the only comment we got from town council is, play this out, you will have the information, and they understood George's perspective, which is, wait, what we want to do is try to have a continued understanding of the sensitivity, that this can be impactful to the neighborhood. So that was where town council said to us, you will have the record.
I think it at least educates, say, the public. I mean, this will be received in public, and so the neighbors will know, everybody will know, and I think they could go back to and complain, and they got the whole complaint process at the Board of Ed and use that to whatever extent they can. There is a limit to what we can do about it, but this is at least responsive to what the complaints were, I think.
See, me personally, no offense, I don't kind of like it because one, it's an expense. Where do you start it from? I mean, the only time we did this a couple different times, and we did it started with Wilder Gleason. It happened on the chicken joint, right, where they measured the sound. We had that woman come in here, and it happened with BMW. And Wilder had, he did the sound thing, and he measured it, and we said, okay. And we didn't do anything, but those guys paid for it. Now you're creating, an ongoing expense for the school. We don't know what it's going to do.
5 sessions over 6 months.
But over in perpetuity.
No.
6
First
months.
year.
6 months.
Oh, I thought it was a perpetuity. I'm sorry.
Mm.
So then it goes on. What are you gonna do with it?
Leverage. Yeah.
I think this, and there was some discussion of how this tied into condition J on page 12, the last page of the resolution relative to, any complaints or comments received and how they were addressed. The report will allow the Board of Ed to consider what they could do differently to reduce impacts to neighboring property owners and to better understand impacts of the lights in the public address system.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So it's really this monitoring that allows the Board of Education and the town to understand the potential impact of the system. And, hey, if there is in fact an impact, hey, what could we do differently to lessen those impacts?
Build a 60-foot tall wall.
Vote out the BOE guys, replace them with other people that want to come before us and change the regulations.
Yeah.
So this is also activities that are only after 7 o'clock.
Yep.
So if my graduation
testing
theory is
is
at 5, it starts at 5. It doesn't affect that at all.
Right.
So I mean, I'm guessing they have more than 5 events after 7 o'clock, right?
Oh, I'd say,
Sure, in the fall.
in the
Because
fall.
when each team gets two, there's 10 teams.
Otherwise,
I mean,
the late
Right,
issue
you
would
have
be
field
moot.
hockey, you have lacrosse, I think it's fall.
No, across the
Spring.
spring.
Okay, so you have field hockey,
Football.
football.
You have soccer,
Soccer.
football, there's it's really the 4 teams.
Yeah.
Rugby.
Soccer,
Football.
field hockey, football.
There may be other things we're not aware of, so each team might get, and again, a handful of games under the lights. So football plays, say, 5 home games, 5 away games,
Right?
they would have some, presumably some day games and some night games.
I mean, they weren't meeting the cap, if I remember correctly, right, from the original regs in 2017, they weren't even hitting that cap for events, right? It was 21 events per year or
I didn't think
something?
there was a cap.
No, I think there.
There was
did we
one. They
talk
were
about
under it. I remember somebody
17?
asked
I
them,
think
it
there
was
was a cap of,
21, 20, something around there?
Because it was two per sport.
yes, two
Yeah,
per
and
sport.
they were under it. Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, because somebody didn't use theirs.
Right.
All right, so what do we want to do about George's paragraph? I mean, I don't mean to say it like that, but George's paragraph number G. Because the more I read it, the other than the cost of it, the cost of the testing, it's a one-shot deal.
5 shots over 6 months. Yeah, and then it's done, right?
Do they even have 5 events over those 6 months? They must.
Hope so, or we're spending a lot of time for something that's not so valuable.
Yep. Or do you say that the spirit of what we're trying to help the community accomplish as far as a feedback loop is accomplished in J, and strike it entirely? Because it's too ambiguous and we don't really know what we're doing with it.
And if the neighbors want to do their own sound testing, they can do their own.
That's what I was gonna say.
And,
Like,
and
why
there
are
is
we
a
imposing the
mechanism,
school to do
and
a
there's a
sound
mechanism by which we're asking for official feedback on complaints
Yeah.
and times and whatnot in J. And this might, G, with, I just don't know if we're not gonna do anything with it or have, if we know the state regulations exempt when it goes over, I don't know what we're gaining out of that when we have a feedback loop for incorporated in J.
And if it does exceed the whatever the decibel level is, you have to figure out what that was. You know, was it a football?
I was just gonna say,
Was it a touchdown?
is it cheering? Is it the PA system? Is it, like, you can't differentiate the noise.
What
and
happened at 9:31
Mm-hmm.
on the Friday night game? Oh, let's check the tape. Oh, Darien scored a touchdown. You know, because it's gonna be a sign that goes like that, it spikes. That's the problem. And I go back to, you know, the neighbors could pay for it if they really wanted it, because
And
that
then they
happens,
could present it to the town as a reason why this is not in line with the community.
because that happens all
Under-
the time.
under J,
These guys get expert witnesses to fight it, which is
also puts-
expensive.
It also puts a little bit of the onus on the neighbor. Like, if this is really a real problem for you, okay, spend some money on it.
Yeah.
And there's a mechanism for them to present it and say, here it is. We did the testing, 45 is the normal for a community. You guys are at 120 every night.
Yeah.
Every time we test, it was 120,
Yeah.
I bet you, Nick, you could do it on these phones too.
probably.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
I would just say to your point, the Board of Ed is the beneficiary of having the lights and the ability to use PA, so that they should have to be moderate and reasonable and be checked up at their own expense doesn't offend me. But I'm going no farther with all this.
That was the main
But also
comments were all
remember-
about the noise, though, like,
Right,
all of
but
them
also
were about the noise.
We have to
So,
switch
like,
it someplace later.
If the Board of Ed has to do 5 tests, I don't think that's unreasonable. It's not some
Yep.
materially large expense that they'll have to do.
But the one thing that I want to go back to is,
What do you do?
and I don't know how this comes up on
You can do
page
the
4
circular loop, like-
at the
Yeah.
bottom.
If it's
You
in,
know,
like, if it's more
youth
than double.
authorized for the related activities authorized by the Board of Education or the Town of Darien. It's not only the Board of Education, because this provision also covers McGuan Field. Parks and Rec, when we did this way back when, it was written that in the 6 acres, which is prior to that was picked because of McGuan Field. If you wanna put lights at McGuan Field, it's got nothing to do with Board of Education, you can do that. Cause you can put 80-foot stanchions at McGuan Field and light up McGuan Field.
The town,
So what you're saying, Steve, is on the bottom of page 4, that's relative to the zoning change, is you want the wording to be changed to say authorized by the Darien Board of Education on school properties or the Town of Darien on town property.
Correct.
To clarify that, while today, as we sit here in 2022, there are only 80-foot lights on one town property, that in 20, 30, 40 years from now, if we put lights up on Town Hall
Town
or
Field,
McGuan
yeah.
Field,
Yep.
it would
Great
not be
Island.
sensical,
Put my Great Island.
it would not be sensical for the Board of Education to regulate. So what you're saying is modify the wording in the regulations, say authorized by the Darien Board of Education for school properties and the Town of Darien for town-owned properties. Town-owned, non-school properties.
Cause yes. Cause the thing that.
Temporary lights back here. You ever seen those?
Yeah.
Travesty, the kids are sucking in carbon monoxide. It's like you go down on the field, it's a big pit, and they have these giant generators, and they're just pumping out.
That's why they did the electricity ones at the high school, they did all that.
Right.
They're the only ones like in the state they had them specially made.
Awful.
And this comes up later, and I just wrote on page 5, number 1, probably to expand. This doesn't cover fireworks. The lights get used the night of the fireworks, which is a town event.
True.
what doesn't cover?
This whole thing doesn't contemplate like fireworks,
Oh,
which
this
is
whole thing.
which is a town event. Because something like, for argument's sake, I forget it was here or someplace else, if the town wants to have fireworks, and it's on a Sunday, because of the way the 4th of July first, you're not allowed to according to this. You can't have 4th of July fireworks on a Sunday.
We never have 4th of July fireworks on
According
the
to
4th of
this.
July.
I know, I know it.
I don't think that matters. Right, we almost
But
never
let's
have
say
the 4th of
let's say
July
you had a
fireworks.
rain date, and if it's not gonna be
Yeah. Yep.
on Saturday, it gets pushed the next day, and that's a
Yeah.
Sunday, you can't have it.
That's a whole different issue. Do
Yeah.
we wanna go there?
But it comes down to Saturdays,
Could they apply for a special permit exemption? Like,
I don't know. Yeah, they don't come to us with the
We
fireworks.
saw that the first year, the fireworks at the high school, the first year, and we've never seen it since.
Yeah.
Because it came up the first year because of traffic. And they had the whole crazy traffic plan, and
Right.
the police did, then we had relative to your testing thing, they had I don't know if we ever saw a follow-up on the traffic for that. But sometimes you do those follow-up things, like how was the traffic report? It's fine. Where does that come?
move it to the beach, like every other town
So
in
did we
Connecticut
end
on the
up
coast,
by-
except for us.
Yeah, exactly. Nearwater Lane's the problem.
So did
Yeah.
we end up, where are we ending up on this? That D is staying in? I'm sorry, that
G?
that
G.
testing's staying in?
I would personally like to take it out, because I don't think it's got any juice, and I don't know how to do it.
I think it's responsive to the concerns we heard. 5 tests over 6 months, not a big deal. Just my view.
No, that's what we're seeing here,
I think it should stay in, I don't think it's that big of a
Okay.
deal either.
right?
It's a terrible idea. I really do. I did.
Down to you. We got 2-2. All right, Amy. We could have started at this end,
Yeah.
and that would have been for this guy, but we didn't.
You know, I think I'm the one that actually thought it was a good idea to test, to be responsive to the noise. If it doesn't put us at jeopardy that we have this information and we're obligated to do something with it, I'm fine with leaving it in. So if the feedback from Wayne said, you know, you're putting yourself in jeopardy collecting this information and not doing something with it, if that was his feedback, then I'd say, let's take this out. If it was leaning in that direction, then I would say take it out. But if I can appreciate it being, it's a one-time event and leaving it in because the feedback we heard predominantly was about noise, not about the lights.
But then let's add, do you want to add to that sentence with the other items that you just said? You wanted to expand it?
Reference, you know,
You wrote a bunch of other stuff there.
right, with a view toward limiting noise in excess of residential zones of 45 decibels at night per the regulations. You had a problem.
Let's just get the test
But if
in
you
and
do-
put it on the
if you do-
website and then let them do
If you put a
with
standard in
it.
there, they're gonna come in, they're gonna be like, yes, of course it was louder than residential noise.
Yes, and I think
For
we
a
understand.
game.
Yeah.
And so you're now in violation of the.
No, we understand it'll be in excess. Question is, add by how much? I think, but we can take that out, strike it. If the rest of the paragraph can go in, then that's good by me.
If the commission wants to keep it in my view, it would be a single report that gets submitted. So, you know, when we talk about testing 5 separate times, we're not talking about, let's submit 5 separate reports.
No,
to,
it's one
Yeah.
report.
Yeah.
Test
Yeah.
one, this
You know,
date,
it's-
this location, test two,
Yeah.
this date, this location,
It's
blah,
the
blah, blah,
Board of
here's
Ed,
the table, throw it on the
Yeah.
website, done.
retaining a noise consultant, you know, they do this study over a period of 5 months, they put together a report and submit it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's,
It has some legs to it.
right, a single
Yep.
go at it.
Yep, agreed.
So we got 3 yeses and we got 2 nos. So it sounds like it stays. But we're gonna leave it as is, right?
With the wording, did you want to say coordinated in timing and locations
Yeah.
You gotta coordinate
With
timing
B and Z.
locations.
with the planning and zoning office, right?
So we're basically talking about events from September to March?
That's
Right.
6 months from now.
September to February.
Yeah.
Do we say from now?
Well-
Me for 6
Make
months.
it 9 months?
Well,
Are you gonna
again,
cover
you
it?
could have a situation where this is appealed and they don't really take this up for who knows. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows when it starts? I'm just
Yeah.
saying that
Yeah.
the lights are only really gonna be used during the
Yeah.
fall sporting season.
most of the light use is probably
Oh, that's good. 5
September to
events
December.
over a maximum of 6 months period. Very cleverly written, good.
Yep.
But what about if you have you're not gonna pick the, I don't know, April 1st to October 1st.
We'll have to
You're
deal
gonna-
with that.
You're
We'll
gonna
have
do
to
that?
take a common
That's
sense
what-
reading of
It's
this.
coordinated.
So if you
Yeah.
say, hey, the lights, March to October, or March to September, you'd be like, well, this isn't gonna work.
They might not even have 5, they might
Yeah.
not even have
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
They
events.
might not even have
Yeah.
5 events during that time.
Yeah.
So we'll take a
Yeah.
common sense reading.
All right, fix it to what you added with the coordinates for you guys, and then
Okay.
just make sure
Yeah.
town council.
Yep,
Do we want to vote on this tonight, or we want to wait until?
I'd rather wait and get a second draft, to be honest with you.
yep,
Works for me.
agreed.
So what we're gonna do.
There's
did you-
no rush on this thing.
What?
Because the
Talk
football
to
schedule set, the EJFL schedule
Yeah,
set.
it's already done.
There's
Yeah.
nothing, this doesn't change anything.
Nope.
to get us to the end of September. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll return to the commission with a revised draft for your next meeting. Okay? Whenever that may be. We're not sure
There's
yet.
2 other small things out in here. One
Sure.
is, paragraph 1 on page 2. It talks about Board of Ed, Board of Ed, Board of Ed, then at the bottom it says the board.
Sorry, where is that, Steve?
Right here, the Board of Education has done so.
Board of Education, Board of Education.
Got it,
says the
last
board.
sentence.
Yep. Where's something else? Then on page 5, paragraph 1, third line down, it says explain the hours and number of days that the lighting public service may be utilized.
Yes?
It's the number of days of the week, right? We're not expanding from 20 to 50. They're expanding the number of days of the week. So by the hour and number of days of the week that the lighting public address may be utilized.
Didn't
'Cause
they
we-
also want to expand the number of days
But we came up with a cap of 50.
Okay.
Right, then, lights must be off at 7:30 PM Monday through Thursday for practices, and 10 PM on Friday for games.
7:30?
Oh, this, I guess this is the old one?
This is the old one.
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't matter,
Okay.
Yep.
sorry. Okay. Public comment. All right, so we're gonna see second draft of this thing.
Yes.
Everybody good with that? Okay.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Votorama?
It's
Yeah.
like almost quarter to 11. Wow. We're not even halfway through this. Flood diversion application number 430, landfill and regrading application number 530, James and Margaret Tweedy at 94 Nearwater Lane. Proposal to construct a new single-family dwelling on a now vacant lot, construct a driveway, patio areas, and pool, and formulated site development activities within regulated areas, including the regrading the property, connecting the new home to public water and sewer. This is the first house that's being built on Nearwater Lane by the Tweedies who did the subdivision. We have a resolution, a draft resolution in our hands, which is right here. Craig Flaherty from Redness and Need did it. This is where they're putting in that special drainage system that's gonna cover more than one lot. Pretty straightforward. Craig did, I think did a great job. So, we got a draft resolution, questions, comments, typos on this one? Adam saying no, Amy, no, we're good. Mike, now you good, George?
All set.
Okay. Looking for,
Steve, I would just add real quick that this one just was a little bit more on the complicated side because it was tied to the previous subdivision the commission approved. So condition J of this resolution ties many different conditions to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the new house, including the construction of the new low-volume residential street bounding the north side of the subject property, filing of easements for the stormwater the shared stormwater management system that's shared by 3 or 4 of the lots, establishment of the homeowners association, and then some additional miscellaneous requirements, but that goes above and beyond what would be our normal conditions of approval for this type of thing.
yeah, no, you did a great job.
Yep.
All that stuff's gotta be in there. Okay, thanks for pointing that out. With that said, entertain a motion to approve as submitted. George makes a motion, Adam makes a second. All in favor? Yep. 5-0. Great. Next up, we have coastal site plan review number 68A is an apple. Damien, I went whiff on that one. Radele and Aaron Monimich at 25 Tokeneke Trail. Proposal to construct a 1,538 square foot addition to the north side of the existing residence, reconfigure the driveway and construct retaining walls, new steps, walkway at the front of the house, and perform related site development activities within regulated areas, including installation of a new septic system. I'm drawing a blank.
This is
Up on a hill, very narrow.
Oh, is this the Wilder's house with,
Yeah, the two
yeah.
houses, they're gonna cut it, they're gonna do all the renovations to the second one.
connect the house to the garage.
Yeah.
Oh,
You needed a height variance because the garage is so much lower.
Remember,
it might
the guy
connect.
didn't know the height of it, we had him come back, he looked
Yeah.
at the thing, because it was a weird pitch.
it's like a railroad.
Yeah, all right, there's like a cupola.
House faces sideways,
Yeah,
shared
it's a real-
driveway.
it's a weird place.
And the key here was they're gonna build an all-new septic system,
Yeah.
so that was helpful.
Yeah, Wilder Police. There we go.
Yep, Wilder Gleason represented the applicant, so he needed a coastal site plan review because the property's right on the water. But the fact that there's actually a decrease in impervious surface because they're changing the driveway.
One
And
driveway that goes all the way through it to
so-
the main house.
So frankly, from a drainage standpoint, it's an improvement, you get a new septic system, and as I said, the only unique part of this was they needed a building height variance. Mike probably saw this as part of the ZBA.
I believe I did.
There you go.
Ledge all over the property.
Questions,
Alright.
comments, typos on this one?
Oh,
Anything?
I hate to nitpick, but okay, I
Go
will.
right ahead.
Just, Jeremy, interesting, you just referred to the decrease in impervious, but the language here says due to the fact there is a increase in impervious surface. I think you want to pick one.
Thank you, George.
No.
We're
Good
neutral.
catch.
Paragraph B on page 3.
Got it.
Good catch.
There we
Because
go.
usually what happens is, in a case like that, Wilder would read it, and he would be calling us tomorrow morning saying, come on, guys.
Yeah, he's gonna go back here and make another thing and get himself another fee.
Should have made it stick here. It's another Wilder one.
I'm done for the evening.
Looking for a motion to approve as edited.
Nice, that is-
Adam makes a motion, Amy's got the second, all those in favor? 5-0, done. Next. Coastal site plan review number 371, floods dam prevention application number 433, Charles and Kristen Collier at 65 Pear Tree Point Road. Proposal to relocate air conditioning units now located over the Goodwise River and expand mechanical pad northeast corner of the existing residence, construct the decks on the second level of the residence to make improvements to the structure and its mechanical equipment, increase its compliance with the FEMA regulations of Section 820 of Darien zoning regulations, perform related site development activities within regulated areas, including burying the propane tank in the front yard of the property, hearing closed on July 26th. This is that really cool black house on the way when you get to Pear Tree Point Beach. And Wilder's making the house, or Wilder, I love giving him credit, is making the house less non-compliant.
It's not perfect, but it's an improvement.
Yeah. And it's, whoever owns this thing, it's their, like, ADU on the water.
Yep.
We have a draft resolution, pretty straightforward. I didn't see anything that jumped off the page to me on it. Questions, comments, typos, scrivener's errors on this one?
No.
Nothing?
I'm good.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve as submitted. Who's up? Adam, it's Adam's
Why not?
on a roll.
Killing it.
Adam making
And took all of July off so that I could
Yeah.
just make a lot of motions.
Mike, are you in the game? I don't think you.
Oh, yeah.
He hasn't made a scoreboard yet. Mike made the second. All's in favor?
That's right.
As written. Number 9, one more for the road. Coastal site plan review number 370, floods dam prevention application number 432, landfilling and regrading application number 532, the estate of Peter Ames Goodhue, Trust et al. At 25 Harbor Point Road. Proposal to raise the existing residence and to the foundation, construct a new single-family dwelling with minor additions atop the existing foundation, construction of an elevated patio and landscaped areas at the rear of the residence, including construction of a series of terrace retaining walls, expanding the driveway, perform related site development activities within regulated areas, including regrading the property, installation of a stormwater management system. The hearing closed on July 26, 2022. Draft resolution in our packet. This was done by McCord Engineering. Harry Rochfeld was here. What's big about this one? Questions, comments, typos on this one? This one I kind of sort of remember.
So Mike, we had to watch all these Vimeos of these hearings?
He had a fun weekend.
All between 4:45
Questions, comments, typos on this guy?
This one's gonna be a really cool house.
I watched this one.
Good? Motion, looking for a motion to approve as submitted?
Yep.
Amy makes the motion, looking for a second. George makes a second. All in favor? 5-0.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Next item is gonna be simple.
Extension.
Somebody wants an extension from Bob Maslin. Subdivision number 630, landfilling and regrading application number 157, 92 Half Mile Road. Request for extension of time to demolish the domestic structures and the Mylar on the land records. You can't file the Mylar until you demolish the structures, so.
They've been tearing this house down for months now.
Yeah.
How many months does he want?
That's another 6.
Three.
3.
3. We usually give him,
Yeah.
just, is his second one?
Yeah, it's the second one.
Here, right, Chris, second one. 3's fine, right, so he's asking for?
Yep.
Yep.
Anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Great. We don't need to make it, straw poll? Everyone, motion to approve that? Good?
5-0.
5-0. Okay, that's that.
All right, minutes.
Deliberation of any public hearing closed on the September 6th, which is tonight. We just wanted to approve that one thing that we talked about,
The Tokeneke Club? Or
No.
the accessory apartment?
accessory
We'll
apartment.
have something written up for the next meeting.
Okay, so we're going to direct staff to grab something on the next meeting, okay?
Yep.
Good.
Got it.
Can we punt the minutes?
Let's punt everything else. We were originally going to meet next week. We had 2 public hearing items. One was Great Island. That's been continued. The other was 35 Old Parish. That is also likely to be continued. We were also going to have on the agenda executive session, to discuss settling of litigation, but the settlement's not done. So those 3 items were going to take up the bulk of your night, and none of them are ready. So we were going to cancel next week's meeting and push it to the week after, either Monday the 19th or Thursday the 22nd, because we can't get a room on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I wanted to get a sense from the commission, what works for the 5 of you who are here tonight, Monday the 19th or Thursday the 22nd?
I'm okay with both at this
Monday
7:30.
would be
Yeah,
significantly more
Appealing.
appealing than a Thursday night for
Yeah.
me.
Thursday.
Who's
that
playing
Thursday.
Thursday night?
No, I have
The
a,
Chiefs versus like the Packers or something?
no, I have a conference in the city all day till about 6 or so I'd have to be rushing.
And I got
here.
invited out to dinner on the night of the 13th, so.
Yeah, so, Mike, preference, 19th, 22nd, George?
19.
19th.
George, Amy?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's likely to be in this room, we'll let you know, it'll be a special meeting, so we'll have to set the agenda. And so we're gonna cancel your meeting of the 13th, and hopefully the meeting on Monday, the 19th, will be productive, and we'll put these minutes on, and a draft resolution about the accessory apartments, and whatever else creeps out between now and then.
Cool.
13th is gonna be canceled.
We would just ask that you hold on to your minutes from
Just so you know.
Yeah.
this week's packet,
Kill a
so
bunch
we
of trees.
Send more out.
don't end up printing these 6 sets for
Yep, yep, yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
next time around.
Okay.
Thank
Looking
you.
for a motion, we're gonna move everything else to the next agenda.
Yes.
It's gonna be like the 19th,
The 19th.
so that's good. Everything else gets punted. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, he'll make
Mike
it.
makes the motion.
There it
Did you
is.
got it?
Yep.
Amy's got the second. All in favor? Done.
5-0.
Thank
Thank you all.
you. Welcome, Mike.